This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate first part of What If Naruto Was Raised by Anbu Black Ops. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Through the open windows of the Hokage's office, the sun shone in a brilliant gold. The aches of old joints and the beginnings of arthritis were lessened as summer warmth made its way even into the deep gulfs of Sarutobi's wrinkly hands. The Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakure took a moment to enjoy the delights of a summer afternoon, despite being confronted with a mountain of paperwork that was 3 hours high. He inhaled a whiff of compost, a hint of wood smoke, and the smell of heated earth and leaves. A laugh here, a cart clatter there. Even the sounds of his village drifted up on the soft breeze. A faint knock on the door of his office. He yelled, "Come in," as he straightened the official hat that was lying on his desk, abandoned. A tall man moved as though he were unaffected by the laws of gravity or the constraints of his joints and bones as he slid into the room. Despite the sword handle sticking out from behind one shoulder, he held a small boy against the other with gentle arms encircling his neck. "Naruto!" cried Sarutobi, getting up and rushing around the desk. He asked the Anbu, "What happened?" The ninja put the child on his feet while kneeling. He turned a streaked face toward the one adult who always had a smile for him, his bright yellow hair dulled by dirt. He didn't, however, rush to get a reassuring hug and bury his face in the white robes. Instead, he tucked his cheek into the bend of the man's knee and wrapped his arms tightly around a leg that was dressed in black. The ninja turned the beaked mask over his face toward the man above him and patted his back with one gloved hand. "Sasaki locked him out of the house. Again. He wanted to come see you." A hand was braced against the desk by Sarutobi. He rubbed at the pain that was starting to develop inside his skull and said, "I thought the physical attempts had ended with that last group." Suddenly the heat was unbearable. Most decent adults can't stand violence against a child. It was children this time. I don't know if Sasaki was afraid to open the door, or just didn't care. Sarutobi leaned down to place a hand on Naruto's shoulder and asked, "What age?" But the boy squirmed away toward the crouching person beside him. Naruto's skinny shoulders were encircled by the Anbu's arm. Maybe 8 or 9. Still in academy. No forehead protectors. "I drove them off as soon as I could, but he's kind of shaken up." Sarutobi gave a sympathetic nod. "Hey, Naruto. You want to take a look in the bottom drawer of my desk? There might be something there for you." From the dark fabric of the Anbu's leg, the whiskered face rose. He piped, "Ramen?" Naruto completely relaxed as Sarutobi smiled. Naruto rushed to the drawer and opened it while the Anbu watched. The chocolate candy hidden in the left corner was almost as welcome as the bowl of steaming ramen he had been hoping for. As Naruto bit into the delicious nugget, a smile gradually reappeared on his smudged face. "Hokage. Sama," said the Anbu softly at first. "I think he's old enough now that he could live at." "No." The Hokage's weary eyes glowed with anger. "I thought I made my decision on that clear already. Anbu is no place for a child to grow up." The ninja's voice grew intense in the bass registers as he said, "Neither is where he is now. His only friends shouldn't be a ninja who can't show him his face and the leader of his village. We're not enough for him." And how would Anbu fix that? 100 ninja who can't show him their faces? No, Falcon.san. Anbu will guard him. That is all. "Yes, Hokage. Sama. I apologize." Sarutobi let out a deep sigh. "I understand your concern, Falcon.san. But Anbu is not the solution. I will see if Maeda.san can make room for him to stay with her for now." "Yes, Hokage. Sama." The Anbu briefly closed his eyes behind his mask. The same would apply to Maeda. After 4 days, summer thunderstorms had replaced the splendor of the summer sun as Falcon knocked at the door of the Hokage's office once more. Rain rolled off his slate gray cloak and trickled from his disheveled brown hair. It was intended that the cloak would be waterproof. Since the saturated cloth was no longer able to absorb any more water, it was only now shedding water. Falcon didn't seem to notice the rain because he was focused on his objective. Dark and furious, chakra roiled beneath his skin. He grunted, "Hokage. Sama," as he entered the office. Sarutobi confronted his rage with his own chakra. Presence from his position at the book and scroll shelves along one wall. Falcon.san. The Anbu made a noticeable effort to control his emotions after realizing that the Hokage, who was standing across the room watching him warily, was his challenge. "You are needed at the hospital, Hokage. Sama." Calmly, Falcon.san. "I'm quite busy," Sarutobi said. The Anbu had calmed down, so he lowered his chakra warning. "Would you care to explain why?" Naruto. Falcon recoiled as Sarutobi's chakra flared. With his pale robes flowing elegantly around him in contrast to the black rage permeating the air, the elderly man pushed a volume back onto the shelves and swept towards the door. When he arrived at the small hospital room, the Hokage tamed his aura. Sarutobi forced himself to smooth his features, wishing he still had his own porcelain mask to conceal himself behind. The Anbu dampened his chakra, as he had instructed. However, when Falcon slid the door open, the Hokage's tight control almost faltered. Between the bleached white sheets, Naruto lay like a doll, the hospital bed dwarfing his small frame. He was silently staring at the ceiling with his blue eyes open. As Sarutobi stumbled in the doorway, he looked around. The Hokage swiftly collected himself and entered with assurance. "Hello, Naruto." The boy gave him a radiant smile. "Hey, old man." However, as Sarutobi took off his raincoat and sat on the edge of Naruto's bed, his wide eyes began to well up with tears. Sarutobi wrapped his arms around him and allowed him to cry into his shoulder. He rested his cheek on Naruto's silky hair and cocked his head to the side. With a hand casually resting on his kunai holster, the Anbu stood silently by the door. He was uneasy. Sounds in the hall kept grabbing his attention. Anbu taught its agents to solve the issue and complete the task at any cost. The citizens of Konoha were now the issue, and there was nothing he could do about it. Naruto was weeping silently, the repressed sorrow of a much older person. A few minutes later, he wiped the perspiration from his cheeks and kissed Sarutobi's cheek. When he attempted to smile, his split lip had reopened, and the old man's skin was smudged with red blood. Sarutobi curved a finger at the Anbu as he stood up and gave Naruto some final words of comfort. Falcon went out after him. In the hallway, Sarutobi yelled, "And where were you?" Naruto was cut off from the conversation by the sliding door, and Sarutobi's eyes returned to their rage. "Your job is to prevent things like this, is it not, Anbu-san?" Falcon's perpetual porcelain scowl was still visible behind its red and white mask. "It is, Hokage-sama." "Then what were you doing? Checking Maeda's house. You didn't send a Bunshin to do it, or to stay with him?" Falcon tensed his shoulders. His words were abruptly cut off. "My Bunshin don't have that sort of range, Hokage-sama," he said. With him, it was a point of contention. Even though Falcon would never debate the topic with his Hokage, Sarutobi chose to shift the topic rather than keep questioning the ninja's judgment. There were more pressing matters to attend to. Was it the same children as last time? No. Falcon's lips pulled back his teeth behind his mask. The tone of the Anbu's voice caused the Hokage's eyes to narrow and his mouth to turn down. They're not going to bother him again. Falcon, however, continued to talk. It was the same situation, though, Hokage-sama. The children emulate what they see the adults doing. Most of the adults don't see Naruto as a person, so he loses that status in the eyes of the younger generation. If he's not human, they can do whatever they want to him. And none of them see him any other way. So no matter how many individuals I stop from bullying him, hurting him, there will always be more. The Hokage's eyebrows went up. That's some heavy psychoanalysis, Anbu-san. How are you qualified to draw those conclusions? Falcon heard the implied. I spoke to a friend about this a while back. Indeed. Morino Ibiki. Ah, yes. He's more than familiar with the workings of the human mind. So you're saying that until Naruto proves himself as a person to everyone in the village, this will never end? Not entirely, no. Falcon's pensive silence revealed to Sarutobi how naive the ninja believed relying on the goodness of humanity was. I am well aware of the villagers' opinions and actions against Naruto, Falcon-san. I had hoped that it might get better for him if we gave it time. What makes you think it will be any different in Anbu? Falcon's eyes grew wide, barely visible through the narrow slits in the bird's face. That possibility was being raised by Hokage himself. The Hokage scowled at the lip and said, it couldn't be worse. Falcon rushed forward, determined not to let this opportunity pass him by. He took a deep breath and paused, saying, Anbu is structured. We obey rules. And we understand duty more than the average civilian, Hokage-sama. Also, my captain said once that the Yondaime wanted the village to treat Naruto as a hero. Maybe that's impossible, but I know at least some people at Anbu will see him as a person, not a cage. And that's what he needs most of all. Sarutobi looked long and evaluatingly at the Anbu. He glanced painfully at the bedroom behind them and said, the arrangement with Maeda and Sasaki is not working. We can both see that. So Naruto can stay for a month at the Anbu headquarters. In that time, I will find a better family for him to stay with. When I do so, he will return to them. Is that clear? Yes, Hokage. Sama. And Falcon.san. Civilians have hurt him, but do not forget that one Anbu could kill him. If he comes to harm, I will hold you personally responsible. Yes, Hokage. Sama. Falcon noticed too late that he was still drenched after Sarutobi had left and ran a hand over his short hair. He gave him a handshake. Water droplets sprayed into the air. Falcon smiled behind the hooked beak. At last, Naruto was given another chance. Not a fresh start, as he would always bear the weight of his past, but a chance to make that not the only thing that mattered. His older sister's face appeared before his eyes as she knelt in her garden's dirt, a curl of brown hair falling into her eyes as she tilted her head back in laughter. His chest grew constricted. Her baby son was buried next to her, and she had been dead for 5 years. Even Naruto's role as its jailer could not make the Kyuubi inconsequential. But as soon as her face appeared, he saw a grin as big as Fire Country and bright yellow hair. Naruto should take precedence over Jinchuriki. Even at Anbu, nobody had survived that catastrophe without suffering personal losses. However, the pain had been there for 6 months, which is enough time for scars to heal and heartaches to start to heal. The old wounds might be touched by blonde hair and whiskers, but they were no longer raw. He would be accepted by Anbu. Even though the Sandaime was reluctant, Falcon felt that if Naruto had to grow up covered in blood, it was better that it not be his own. Perhaps too many years of conflict and devastation had warped his senses. The following day the sun was shining, rising golden and bright into the blue sky, as is characteristic of a Fire Country summer. As Falcon made his way down the twisting, unlit streets, sweat trickled down his hairline and on the back of his neck. Like all shinobi, he was accustomed to carrying heavy weights for extended periods of time, but there was a rule about young children that the longer you carried them, the heavier they became. Halfway between the hospital and the Anbu complex, Naruto decided he was tired, even though he had an almost inhuman amount of uncontrollable energy. Falcon's defense had been shattered by the assault of Blue Eyes. The Anbu was certain that he hadn't gone as far as pouting, but it hadn't been far off. Not far enough inside the edge of Falcon's mask for him to reach and brush it away. A bead of salty moisture crept down next to his ear. Once more, the concrete abomination of Konoha's Black Ops headquarters loomed as a picturesque sanctuary. At that, he winced beneath his mask. He adored Anbu, a massive, monstrous structure made of unfinished steel and gray blocks. With its back to the Hokage Monument's cliff, the atrocity crouched in Konoha's northwest corner. It was surrounded by nothing so obvious as a barbed wire fence, but both shinobi and civilians avoided it as though it were one. He gestured in Naruto's direction. The steel girders were gilded in gold by the snatching tendrils of the early morning light. That's it, kid. As though someone had chosen to apply a cadmium wash to the rough concrete, the walls practically glowed. Equally poisonous. In the mornings, Falcon detested the building's architect. It's ugly, Naruto said firmly as he looked over Falcon's shoulder at his new residence. It sure as hell is, concurred Falcon. Squirming, Naruto pressed his slender arms up against Falcon's armored back. Put me down, he insisted on. I wanna walk. He placed a hand on the child's shoulder to steady him as he carefully put him down. With his legs flailing wildly, Naruto withdrew and ran toward the building, utterly unfazed. As Falcon observed the boy's unrestrained behavior, a smile tugged at his lips. He caught up to the escapee after a few long steps and jogged sedentarily to the doorway. Anbu's entrance was a double, wide metal door with a shatterproof glass window on either side. The doors never locked, and the heavy hinges were greased every day. The touch of a fingertip caused them to swing inward. He commended the designers for this particular detail, which they had ensured was taken into consideration when Anbu eventually received funding to build its own facility. Too tired to take another step, Falcon recalled too many times he had opened the doors by falling into them. Even worse were the times when he had been holding a body to his back with his hands without even knowing if it was still alive. Those were nightmare recollections. He pushed those ideas out of his mind. Using his 5-year-old strength, Naruto was straining at the doors, attempting to pry them open. Gently pushing on the right leaf, Falcon extended his arm above his head. Naruto laughed in shame as it started to swing silently inward. Then he threw his entire weight against the door. Falcon smiled beneath his mask and they entered the dark foyer together. The next distinctive element was the lobby, which had a tiled floor and a personal mop closet. However, the unsightly structure had excellent insulation, and Falcon enjoyed the cool air against his sweltering body. The uniformed Anbu on duty was having a casual conversation with a civilian man at a desk a few meters from the door. Falcon paused his smile. With his brown hair falling in an expressive curtain over his shoulders, the man on the close side of the counter threw back his head in laughter. This was Anbu's frog, but he wasn't in uniform. For a brief moment, Falcon pondered whether something was amiss in a scenario where he dreaded seeing his best friend. However, the premise was flawed in so many ways that it was not worth considering in the first place. Falcon had hoped Naruto could settle in a bit before meeting Kyuubi because Kyuubi had killed Frog's entire family. The only survivor of the attack was Frog's younger brother, who died after 4 weeks of being taken to the hospital. Frog had watched his beloved sibling die by inches, and he had taken a few moments to sit by his side, escaping the deluge of missions that had been placed on the severely weakened shinobi forces. He gradually gave way to an agony that not even the most potent painkillers could effectively ease because his lungs were irreparably burned. The boy had been buried by Frog when he was 7 years old. Now he was by himself. Even though he wasn't a cruel or unreasonable man when he was lucid, he had lost a lot. When Falcon entered, Frog looked toward the door. The desk attendant instinctively reached for the mission. Agent Scroll. Falcon casually clarified and waved him away. The shinobi nodded and took another list out of a drawer. In village. In an attempt to see everything at once, Naruto kept turning in circles. The desk, its attendant, the door they had entered through, wide enough for a stretcher team to pass easily, and 3 smaller doorways leading deeper into the building were the only things visible. The walls were painted a dull green, and the floor was tiled in a dull off-white. A closet was deftly positioned at the intersection of 2 walls, its door's seams barely visible due to its brilliant white paint job. To wave to his friend, Frog raised a hand. He called out, "Hey, Rida." "I'm in uniform, idiot," Falcon scolded, making a dramatic flick of his wrist to tap his mask. Frog chuckled. Smugly, "Well, I'm not, Falcon. Chan. I've got a date," he said. "With who?" Falcon inquired inquisitively. The desk clerk seemed to be in on a joke, as evidenced by his quiet laughter. Frog grinned at his friend's evident surprise and said, "Hayate." His mouth's senbon twitched upward. "He's in a relationship, Genma. Are you corrupting little Hayate-kun?" Anbu's Frog, Genma, grimaced. "Hell no, Yugo would punch me into next week. I lost a bet with him." The desk-based Anbu added a few words. "Genma bet that Yugo-san wouldn't kiss Hayate in public. Loser pays for dinner." He laughed. "She did it." The vanquished Anbu leaned languidly against the desk's edge and furrowed his brow. "She did more than that. Middle of the marketplace on Thursday. You should have seen the 2 of them, Rida." Falcon inquired, "How did he get Azuki-san to agree to that?" "She's so, I don't know, proper, I guess is the word." "Stuck up," suggested Genma. "Hayate just told her that I bet she wouldn't. I think she likes to spite me." He sighed. "But now I owe Hayate and Yugo food. We agreed breakfast, instead of dinner, 'cause I've got a mission. She's going to make it hell. Hey, you want to come?" "Sorry, I've got to get the little guy here settled in. He'll be staying at HQ for a month or so, maybe longer." Genma rolled the senbon to the opposite side of his mouth after flipping it slightly upward. His gaze followed the scuttling figure as the child explored every inch of the space. "I was wondering about him." Naruto had been drawn away from Falcon's side by the allure of the vast unknown, and every centimeter would be scrutinized. "Who is he?" The ninja behind the desk cut in. "Falcon-san, you know you can't bring unauthorized personnel in here." Falcon told him, "I have the Hokage's permission. Hey, Naruto-kun, come over here a minute." As he spoke, he observed Genma. His friend stiffened as soon as he said Naruto's name. His teeth tightened around the weapon between them, and his light brown eyes narrowed. With sparkling blue eyes, Naruto ran over. "Anbu-san." As Naruto got closer, Genma's muscles relaxed, but Falcon was unconvinced. His friend was lowering himself into a defensive position, hands relaxed and spread, prepared to form seals or seize a weapon at any time. The young boy came to a halt in front of Falcon and tipped his head back to smile broadly at his new friend. Genma said. His normally charming and smooth voice rasped like stone on metal. "What have you done, Rida?" "Genma, this is Uzumaki Naruto." I have to go, Rida," he said sharply, interrupting. Genma continued to stare fearfully at the boy from behind Falcon's knee, never taking his eyes off his whiskered face. He started to say, "Hokage's orders are not," but stopped. He hurried out, keeping his face carefully blank. When the doors closed behind Genma, Falcon squatted on the ground. The young boy was staring at the floor while biting his lip. He muttered, "Anbu-san, I should leave. He wasn't crying, but the gloomy, lethargic look on his face was worse than tears. I should go far away, shouldn't I? He asked. That's what everybody says. Falcon raised Naruto's face and cupped his hand around his chin. Naruto's eyes were lifeless, twisted inward in opposition to reality. They were the eyes that frequently passed through those double doors. The rookie on his first solo murder, returning with a child's blood seeping through his vest and into his skin. The veteran holding 2 broken masks in his hands, still smelling of fresh paint. And 3 sets of dog tags around his neck. Genma's eyes, which had perished once more when his brother took a final, trembling breath, were there when he stood in the ashes of his house with not even any more bodies to bury. Children weren't supposed to be carrying those eyes. Pushing back his mask, Raida took Naruto in his arms and pressed the soft head of a dandelion against his shoulder. You should stay right here, Naruto. You belong here. But he hates me, murmured Naruto. It's not you, Naruto.kun, in all honesty, Raida stated. Not exactly a lie, but Genma had a personal grudge against the entire Earth nation. Genma doesn't get along with a lot of people. He fervently hoped that his clumsy words would be sufficient to say, I'm sure you two can become friends. Naruto grinned as well. His eyes glowed bright blue and alive, like the sun reflected in a trout pond. Okay, Anbu.ni.san. Hey, you have a face. Raida returned the smile. I simply dislike it. Put an end to that thought before it spreads. Of course I have a face, Naruto.kun. And since I'm off duty now, I don't have to wear the mask anymore. You know what? Let's go get you a room. Then, how about lunch? Ramen! Exclaimed Naruto. He leapt to the air and almost slammed his head into Raida's bare face. Ramen, ramen, ramen. All right, Raida said, laughing, we'll get ramen. He took a quick look at the masked face of the desk attendant and realized that Anbu would soon be abuzz with rumors of Naruto's arrival. However, that was all right. A single issue at a time. And the issue at hand was a ramen. Craving. Hyperactive ball of sky and sunshine. Calm down, Naruto. Ramen comes later. Shinobi had been broken, Raida had seen. He had repaired Genma 10 years ago, just as someone had repaired his own broken spirit afterwards. Raida blessed the fates that had spared Naruto, who was still unbroken. Raida promised himself that he would do everything in his power to keep the young boy whole as he looked into those naive eyes. Naruto ran to the closest door, and Raida got to his feet. He yelled, Hey, this one, gesturing to another door. With a wild smile, the boy rushed to the right exit. Knew that, he said animatedly. Raida's eyebrows went up. Naruto obviously couldn't have known because he had never been in Anbu before. The advice he gave was, if you're going to lie, do it believably. Naruto shoved the door open. It remained stationary. Raida grinned. Pull, Naruto.kun. But I did that before, and I had to push it. This one's different. A wide, well-lit set of stairs emerged behind the door. They began to descend the stairs, saying, We're heading downstairs to the Quartermaster's office. Raida halted at the first landing and grabbed for the door. However, Naruto kept jumping down. Hey! Exclaimed Raida. Can't catch me, squealed Naruto, giggling uncontrollably and turning the stairs at an unhealthily fast pace. Without a single breath of air, Raida suddenly materialized in front of the boy, and he slammed to a stop. You're going to have to get a lot faster if you want that to be true, he told Naruto. And this level is off limits. Naruto sulked. Why? Raida stated, because the torture division is down there, in a casual manner. They don't like being interrupted. After hearing the explanation, Naruto concluded that these people didn't sound pleasant, but he didn't understand it. Thus, he disregarded the problem. You're fast, he said suddenly. Teach me to be fast. Raida started to ascend the stairs once more, reaching out to help Naruto get back up. He started by saying, It's not quite that simple, there's a lot of other stuff you have to learn first. You sure you want to do that? Naruto gave a nod. I'm going to be a ninja, and ninja have to be fast, so teach me. Raida gave a shrug. Maybe if you're good. Finally, Raida indicated the different rooms of the first basement level in the hallway. Mission room. That would be where the squads go over mission assignments, so if the door is closed, don't go in. Another mission room, storage closet, mission room, storage closet. Naruto was bored. Finally, Raida knocked lightly on the door and pushed it open, saying, Quartermaster's office, here we are. Aside from the head of T&I and his favorite apprentice, Morino Ibiki, the 30.2-year-old quartermaster of Anbu was one of the group's most feared members. In his kingdom, The quartermaster held absolute power, and his office was considered sacred territory. When they got on Raida's bad side, the bold hunter.nin he knew would not even pick up their own armor from him. When the door opened, he looked up and gave Raida a smile. "Come on in," he said, extending an invitational hand. He finished wrapping the hilt of a battered katana and then, utterly ignoring his guests, said, "I just have to finish this, then I'll be right with you." Raida grabbed Naruto by the shoulder and pulled the inquisitive boy away from the wall. Mounted shelves. He gripped the air in front of a particularly shiny set of shuriken while pouting. He objected, saying, "I want to see them. I won't break them, I promise." Raida pointed to the dot of paint that adorned the wooden container and said, "See the yellow box?" Naruto gave a nod. "So?" He squirmed beneath Raida's grasp. "Stop grabbing me," he objected. When Raida said, "Stop doing stupid things," he shot back, "Yellow means poison." Naruto's gaze brightened. "That's so cool." Raida gave a snort. The creepy poison expert said, "You need to meet Yugo." Once more, he pulled Naruto away from the box. "Don't touch them, idiot." "I'm not an idiot," screamed Naruto. "I'm going to be a better ninja than you." Raida winced. "Be quiet," he whispered. It seems that he needed more experience speaking to kids. The katana was sheathed and slid onto a shelf beside the table by the quartermaster, who at last took action. Then, with the dull clunk of wood, he stood. He recognized the child instantly as he looked at his whiskered face and said, "What can I do for you, Raida-san?" And, with his chest protruding, Naruto declared, "Uzumaki Naruto," with pride. "Greatest ninja in Konoha." Quartermaster grinned and asked, "Is that so?" His mouth twitched a bit more as he saw Raida's wry expression. The village was saved by him. Raida believed he knew the older man's thoughts. He had been convinced that Anbu would be a better fit for Naruto than a civilian home, in part because of Quartermaster. The man stopped in front of Naruto after stumping around the table. "You must be great if you're in Anbu so young." "I don't think I have a mask small enough," he laughed. "Even Hitaki." Brat waited until he was 14. Raida recoiled a little when he heard his captain called Hitaki. Brat. It wasn't because it wasn't accurate. In fact, it was a pretty accurate description, but because Kakashi would pout if he heard. The rest of the team did not like the sulky captain. If it were possible, Naruto had inflated himself even further. "Yeah, I'm going to be super great," he declared with a lively wave of his arms. The quartermaster gave a friendly nod. "So what did you want, Raida?" "Naruto's going to be living here a while. Is there an empty set of rooms he could have?" With promptitude, he stated, 412 is still open, if you want him close to you." Raida exclaimed, "That's great," in relief. "I thought Aoba's new guy might have gotten that room." "Nah," said Quartermaster with a shrug. "I gave him 307. Hey, any news on a replacement for your team?" Raida gave a headshake. "Not yet," he stated sharply. The two shinobi turned to see a sudden crash. Naruto. From beneath the stack of black shirts, the boy raised his head. "Hey, Anbu.ni.san." Raida insisted, "I'll pick it up," as Quartermaster turned to face the mess. With Naruto's folding acting more as a burden than a benefit, he piled the shirts back into their box. Quartermaster patiently awaited their completion. As Raida slid the box back onto the shelf, Naruto sat on the floor and smiled up at the man. "Ah," went Naruto's voice abruptly. "You have a wooden leg." Raida raised his gaze to the ceiling while facing away from the room. It wasn't just him who needed to develop tact. "Yep." Naruto scampered across the floor to get a better look and asked, "Why?" "Because my other one fell off." Naruto gasped, his eyes wide. "How?" Raida stiffened. Quartermaster, however, merely smiled. "I didn't eat my vegetables." The agent from Anbu relaxed. His confidence in his friend had been sound. Unaware that the monster sealed in his abdomen had torn Quartermaster's leg off the day Naruto was born, ending the promising career of a man everyone said would one day be a captain, Naruto was staring at the tall man, not realizing that it wasn't a lack of vegetables. However, the Kyuubi's container had always been blessed by Quartermaster. Although he had been Yondaimi's close friend, he gave Naruto more credit for saving his life, his daughter's life, and the lives of the other villagers. Raida gave the Quartermaster a small bow. After giving a brief smile, the man went to a locked cabinet and took out a set of keys. "Here, room 412. "Thanks. See you later, sir." "Of course, and come see me again, Naruto.kun." To allow the small imp to leave, Raida held the door open. He threw the set of keys to Naruto. "Don't lose those. Quartermaster might be a nice guy, but he's hell if you lose stuff. Naruto gave a nod. Twirling, he has a wooden leg, he said. I didn't know vegetables could do that. Raida took the boy back to headquarters after they had a ramen lunch. With the exception of Ibiki's vast and psychologically damaging basement lair, he gave Naruto the entire tour. By the time Raida paused in front of the cafeteria, Naruto's eyes were wide. He reiterated, it's huge, having said it multiple times in the previous few hours. With a simple nod, Raida led Naruto to the food counter. Even though Anbu rarely ate at said times, it was already early for dinner, and the cafeteria was largely empty. Someone had dozed off next to a cold bowl of soup in one corner, his mask awry. Raida looked at him quickly, looking for blood. The man did not avoid the medics after a mission. He was simply exhausted. With their trays and a scroll arranged between them, two kunoichi conversed softly next to the windows. Naruto looked with some dismay at the food offerings. No ramen? He asked, wearing a puppy eye. You had ramen for lunch, Raida remarked without emotion. Try the stir-fry. That was typically edible, at least. Raida threw a mound of cabbage on Naruto's plate, but he shrewdly stayed clear of the brown lumps in the oddly green sauce. You want your legs to fall off? He said slyly when Naruto grimaced. When they sat down, Naruto shoved the cabbage into his mouth as if it were an S-rank mission after going pale. They had a peaceful dinner, and Naruto was so exhausted that he consented to go to bed right away. Raida found Naruto an old shirt to wear to bed because all of his belongings were still at Maeda's house. Naruto was too tired to gripe, but the yellow shirt reached the ground. As he climbed into bed and pulled the dark blue blankets over himself, Raida watched him clumsily. Well, good night, he introduced himself. Though he wasn't sure how to do it, he had heard parents occasionally tuck their children in at night. But since Naruto didn't seem to be expecting anything, Raida stood erect in the middle of the room until the boy muttered, "Good night," with his mouth slightly open against his pillow and his eyes already closed. In the hallway, Hayate was waiting when Raida softly closed Naruto's door. After giving his teammate a quick glance, Raida took two pieces of paper out of his hip pouch. He carefully adhered them to the doorposts after drawing a character on each. Naruto would now be aware of any attempt to enter his room. 3 steps to the left, Raida crossed the hall to his own door. As Raida unlocked his door, Hayate trailed behind him, resting comfortably against the wall. He followed his senpai in without being invited. What do you want, Hayate? The only reasonably soft piece of furniture in the apartment was Raida's bed, where the younger ninja sat cross-legged. Raida crossed his arms and leaned a hip against the desk against one wall. A smile plastered on Hayate's face. Yugo and I had breakfast with Genma today. Huh. Hayate made the decision to get right to the point. He said Uzumaki is living here. Yes. Is that wise? Raida gave his teammate a cool look and said, yes. Gecko Hayate had just finished his first year at Anbu and was only 17 years old. When Kyuubi attacked, he had been a genin, but Yondaime had prevented the genin from being killed in the main battle. Apart from the friends that everyone had lost, Hayate had no personal grievances against the Kyuubi. Hayate had no animosity toward Uzumaki, although it wasn't strange in and of itself. Genma hadn't voiced any complaints about his mission despite being tense the entire day. Hayate started to worry at that point. Reluctant to discuss it, he had finally forced Genma to admit that the Jinchuriki was Raida's new ward. However, Genma had strongly cautioned him to exercise caution and avoid the Kyuubi after that was revealed. But after walking Yugo home, Hayate went to the Quartermaster's office to retrieve a fresh pair of arm guards before returning to headquarters. As he rubbed the sore stump of his leg, Quartermaster had been feeling particularly upbeat. In private, he had said, "You should have seen Raida." Hayate nodded and adjusted the guard's straps, saying, "I've always said that man needs to relax some. That kid is like a little brother to him." He was grinning the whole time he was here. Hayate had questioned incredulously, "Raida was?" Indeed, Hayate had noticed Raida's gentle face as he gazed at the young boy while she was standing in the hallway tonight. Hayate was now perplexed because he wanted his friend to be happy and Raida rarely displayed genuine happiness. Thus, Uzumaki-kun, he did not dispute the Kyuubi container with Raida. Before passing any further judgments, Hayate chose to wait and meet Uzumaki in person. He gave his friend a silent warning. At 5 o'clock, Raida was awake, as he usually was. After a few brief stretches, he made his way to the cafeteria. Drool trickled down Naruto's chin to moisten his pillow, but he was still fast asleep. Raida had suppressed a smile. Naruto would need to learn to sleep without spreading his limbs wide if he wanted to become a ninja. That was an excellent method of falling from a tree. There was a diverse mix of early risers and the few agents or insomniacs who had just returned from missions and were about to go to bed in the cafeteria. Raida sat down opposite a drowsy hunter.nin and ladled out a bowl of the difficult.to. Make rice porridge. The man, who was only partially dressed in uniform, bemoaned to Raida his captain's absurd suggestion of holding training sessions all night. Raida got a second bowl of porridge while the man went to sleep. An arm stepped into his line of sight just as he was ready to sit down again. The man to whom the arm belonged leaned arrogantly on the table, hand smack in the center of Raida's position. Raida slowly raised his eyes and gave the face a chilly glare. He was not pleased to see him and was aware of it. As usual, Matsuda was there. Even that harmless gesture became dangerous due to the sneering lift to his lips as he twirled a kunai in his free hand. "How's your pet demon doing, Raida?" Silently, the porridge was set on the table. Raida kept his gaze fixed on his face, ignoring the man's remark. "Still on probation, Matsuda?" The sneer turned into something more repulsive. The abrupt increase in tension caused some heads to turn. It wasn't quite murderous intent yet, but it was close. Intel realized their mistake already, Matsuda replied, appearing composed. "I'm back on active duty." "Our loss," Raida remarked amicably. A snarl formed on Matsuda's face. "Maybe the Kyuubi's corrupting you, Namiyashi. You should be careful, lest you have to be put down." There was a noticeable change from tension to murderous intent. Not quite in a fighting stance, but prepared to move, Raida bowed his knees. The kunai's spin was stopped as its handle thudded into Matsuda's palm. The sudden insertion of a naked katana blade between the two men stopped an attack. Matsuda's eyes were spitting fire as he spun around. "What the hell are you doing, brat?" Hayate gave a courteous smile. With the odds now 2-1, he moved to stand quietly next to Raida and said, "I'm sorry for interrupting your conversation, Matsuda. Senpai, but I need to ask Namiyashi Senpai a question about this katana." Although no one was oblivious to the impending altercation, the rest of the cafeteria was cautiously avoiding observation, and a number of hands were subtly resting close to thigh holsters. The katana of Hayate gleamed. Matsuda wasn't a moron, and even though he was 2 inches taller than Namiyashi and was certain that he could defeat Namiyashi and his scrawny teammate, he didn't want the other members of the breakfast crowd to drag him in to answer to them. He retreated and walked out of the cafeteria. As the tall Junin stepped out, the tension dissipated. Chopsticks were picked up by hands again, and the gentle murmur of informal conversation resumed. Although confrontations were common in Anbu, it was a relief to prevent needless violence, particularly at such an early hour. With all the gratitude he could muster, Raida nodded briefly to Hayate as the younger man sheathed his sword. "I had it under control." Hayate dismissed the blatant lie with a shrug. He protruded the sheath and asked, "Is this about the right size for Uzumaki?" Raida was stunned for a second. Then, using his eyes to gauge its length, he accepted the offered weapon. "Riley, you're the expert," he said. "Yes," said Hayate amicably, "but I'm not sure how big Uzumaki is." "It seems right," acknowledged Raida. He carefully drew the sword, looking at it with a trained eye. He remarked, "This is high quality," with admiration. "Where did you get it?" Looking fondly at the blade, Hayate said, "It was mine when I was his age, my second katana." Astonished in silence, Raida questioned, "Are you sure about this?" His katana had to be worth more than he could pay back with a year of S-class missions because the Gecko family, despite being a small clan and not very prestigious, passed down their swords through the generations. Hayate gave a nod. "It's a loan," he explained. "But Uzumaki will grow out of it soon enough. Child's katana are hard to find in good quality. But he doesn't know how to use a kunai, let alone a katana." Hayate stopped. He wished that Raida would not bring that up. No luck. Raida swiftly added, "Would you teach him, Hayate? Just the basics," noticing the moment of panic. Was that asking for too much? He hoped he hadn't just ruined Hayate's chances of taking Naruto in. Hayate suppressed his irrational desire to run. Instruction for the Kyuubi container. But why had he offered the katana if he wasn't going to? "I'm not sure," he told himself. "I'm a fool." However, Raida's expression returned to its sternness, and Hayate jumped right in. "Sure, I'd be glad to." Officially, Raida was still on a mission. However, Raida was a little lost as to what to do because his mission was currently following him. Raida's life as a hunter in a numbered Anbu squad typically involved leaving Konoha on a mission, finishing it, returning to Konoha, recuperating, and then leaving again. Since the head seemed to believe that having the brilliant Hitaki on the team meant they should be given every possible suicide mission and every thrice Damned S class no one else would willingly take. Recovery actually took up a higher percentage of his squad's time than usual. And because he was Hitaki, he took them all. One of these was the reason Raida had ended up watching a 5-year-old. 5 people made up an Anbu squad, and an unfinished squad would never be sent out. In the event of a member's injury, floaters maintained squads at full strength. However, Kakashi declined to cooperate with them. He insisted that floaters posed a risk to his team and was obsessed with flawless cooperation and teamwork. A few of those floaters regarded his judgment as unforgivable arrogance, while others accepted it with a smile and a headshake. With the squad below full strength, no suitable replacements available, and Kakashi stubbornly refusing to work with anyone other than a permanent replacement, the head of Anbu suspended Squad 14 for an indefinite period of time after Masaru died 2 months ago on an A-class gone south. Hayate was still bedridden in the hospital at the time, but the head had no intention of letting the other members of the team relax. Genma spent the first month trudging through mud in Wind Country, who knew that desert region had so much slime, in order to find a replacement for Squad 19. After receiving a blue tagged in village surveillance scroll, Raida silently witnessed a young boy go through hell every day for the first month of his life. As the talented copy.nin, Kakashi was given what was possibly the worst task of the 3. The head had made the decision to settle some unfinished business. Raida was extremely thankful that he wasn't an assassination expert in this instance, among many others. The 20-year-old was given an armful of files by Intel, and they instructed him to return if he was hurt. After a month or so, the squad finally saw their captain again at noon. His dark brown armor and mud-colored hair were both dark brown, and he just stood in the middle of the foyer, staring at the desk attendant. Despite being covered in filth, he was easily identifiable, and maybe it was the naked Sharingan, spinning slowly, staring at his face, but the rookie on desk duty went into a panic. Hayate stumbled over with his arm out of its sling to save Kakashi before Intel and their psychiatric evaluators could get their hands on him during the chaos that ensued after medics were called. In order to wash weeks' worth of grime and blood from his silver hair, Hayate had escorted his unresponsive commander upstairs and into the showers. The only wounds Hitaki had to display were a glassy right eye and a swollen left eye, and he had already killed all 20 or so of the targets assigned. Raida made his captain speak when he returned that evening, leaving Uzumaki as his stand-in. Choking on bile and disgust, Kakashi ended that night by retching into the toilet with Raida's hand on his back. It was a form of healing that the medics were unable to offer, and it was a NBU's way of crying. The head insisted he couldn't be spared, so Kakashi was gone again in 2 days. He hadn't returned yet. And now Genma had also vanished. Masaru had passed away. Only Hayate, who was now fully recovered, and Raida were in Konoha out of all of Squad 14. Raida turned to training since he had no orders or urgent commitments. At the moment, Naruto was watching Raida train while seated on a rock at the edge of one of ANBU's exclusive training areas. Actually, Naruto was more interested in counting the grass blades beneath his feet than he was in observing his guardian. In contrast to Kakashi's constant appearance of being delicate and wispy, Raida was a man of substance. His left side of his face was warped by a mess of scar tissue, which was perhaps his most distinctive physical feature. Given the obvious power his heavy body possessed, most people assumed he was a taijutsu type. He benefited from it because opponents might not always be watching out for genjutsu. Few people were able to get away after he caught them. It's difficult to break a genjutsu when all of your brain's neurons can only detect pain, not because his genjutsu was intricate or especially well made. Raida believed it was a waste of time to categorize genjutsu. Though any skilled shinobi could employ either type in any circumstance, there were generally 2 types of genjutsu: offensive and defensive. For instance, Yuhi Kurenai's plant-based illusions or the typical disintegration and pain visions were examples of offensive genjutsu. Being defensive would mean hiding, altering perception, or vanishing into mist. Some ninja preferred to categorize the types according to how they impacted the victim, either by directly changing a person's brain or by producing a distorted world that was visible to everyone nearby. However, when both location and mind were involved, looping jutsu caused that method to fail. Despite being skilled in most forms of genjutsu, Raida liked the ones he created himself. Jutsu that was thrown far away had a tendency to enlarge like light and lose power in proportion to the square of the distance. Since one cannot form seals while blocking weapons, the majority of genjutsu practitioners attempted to avoid close combat. The further they were from the target, the more chakra they used to solve the problem. Raida had solved the problem without the use of seals. Hand seals are merely a means of reshaping and transferring chakra. With years of practice, any skilled ninja can learn to use a few jutsu with short seals, or none at all. Raida had become accustomed to forming his own genjutsu without seals. He could approach his victim, block his attacks, and use a skin brush to transfer the chakra. Today's training was increasing his speed. Without seals, he went from a dormant chakra to a disruptive energy spark focused in his fingertips in the blink of an eye. Raida appeared to Naruto to be merely standing in the middle of the field. He gave a yawn. "Hey, Raida.ni.san, when are you going to train?" he yelled. Raida's fingers tingled and he had a slight burning sensation in the back of his mind after the jutsu faded. He gave his head a violent shake to dispel the delusions. It was rare for genjutsu to end amicably, particularly if the caster lost control unintentionally, and even more so if the chakra was still in his body at the time. Raida turned to face Naruto, who was frowning and kicking his feet against the rock. Once more, Naruto demanded, "Aren't you going to do anything?" Raida thought about clarifying once more that this was genjutsu training and that Quartermaster was more than happy to have Naruto come assist with cleaning shuriken if he preferred to do something else. However, that required too much effort. Instead, he rubbed his shirt with his smarting fingers and shrugged. He said, "You want to train, Naruto?" The blue eyes of the boy glowed. "Yeah," he said, then added more cautiously, "Not just standing around, right?" Raida let out a loud laugh. "No, you're not ready for advanced training like that, yet." As he attempted to figure out what was so advanced about doing nothing, Naruto's brow furrowed. He gave up. With a bright suggestion, "Teach me to fight," he withdrew into familiar territory. He valued fighting because he believed it would enable him to stop those who attempted to harm him. And if he wanted to be a ninja, which was all he wanted to do, he would have to be a good fighter. Raida drained his hands of the remaining remnants of chakra. The child would not be able to catch remnants of residual genjutsu. Not when Raida had been using the one Nara Shikaku had assisted him with for practice. Raida thought proudly of his comrade. Now, that man is something. Shikaku had offered, without Raida's request, to relive the agony of Raida's genjutsu after taking a poisoned blade to the abdomen. However, Naruto didn't have to experience the sensation of having his insides torn out while acid ate away at his flesh from the inside, multiplied by 100. In fact, Raida took great pride in that delusion. With it, he had defeated Kurenai, one of Konoha's most accomplished illusionists, even at the age of 20. Even though the genjutsu experts tended to tone down their more nastier jutsus when they practiced with other Leaf.nin, Kurenai had been immobile after her escape. Raida speculated that it might be related to the vivid experience of intestines leaking down his abdomen that Shikaku had described to him using his own genjutsu, the tickling slide of living organs somehow heightening the horror. With a shaky smile, Kurenai had asked if it would be okay if she used the picture. She was still pale and shivering, with a hand flat against her stomach. One of the best compliments a genjutsu practitioner could give another was that. Now, however, Naruto was bouncing up and down, clenching his hands into fists, and tugging at his sleeve. "Let's fight, Raida.ni.san." Raida looked at his position critically. "Foot there," he commanded, using a sandal to prod the offending limb. "Move the other one back." Naruto shifted uncomfortably, attempting to hold the first one where Raida had shoved it while sliding his foot back. The boy's posture was truly terrible. "Bend your knees. Hands up, tuck your thumbs down or you'll break them." By the end of the morning, Naruto was gasping and his t-shirt was drenched in sweat, while Raida was beginning to warm up. While Naruto was sprawled out on the ground, his limbs spread wide, trying to catch his breath, Hayate prodded his head a little sadly into the clearing. Hayate approached them with greater assurance after Raida waved at him. "I didn't want to disturb you too," he informed them. The hilts of a double katana were strapped to his back and protruded above his shoulders. With Raida's assurance, "It's fine," he smiled slyly at Naruto, whose breathing had not slowed at all, and said, "We were just doing some light warm-ups." The flash of porcelain, white at his waist, caught his attention as Hayate knelt next to Naruto and extended a hand. "I'm Gecko Hayate," he introduced himself. "Raida's friend." Naruto said, "The one who kisses Yugo," with a single burst of brightness. Hayate was surprised. Then he gave Raida a scowl. "Why is that the first thing he knows about me?" Raida didn't chuckle. He refrained from laughing. Perhaps he gave a little chuckle. "It's not like you keep it a secret, Hayate.kun." After taking a whiff, he looked back at the boy with the blonde hair. "Nice to meet you, Naruto." "You.huh. Nice to meet you too," Raida told him, "is the right answer to that, Naruto." "Nice to meet you too." Raida confirmed with a nod. He then addressed Hayate, pointing to the mask fastened to his belt, saying, "Good work. Mission? Kind of. Escort thing for one of the counselors. Look pretty and come back by this evening." The elderly man gave a snort. "Waste of time, if you ask me." His smile vanished as he said, "Yeah, but that's all I'm going to get until the squad is back." Hayate chafed because it never received solo missions. He appeared to be in excellent health both now and most of the time. Chakra only infrequently reacted negatively to the latent jutsu in his system because the medics had the effects largely under control. It was just handled by Squad 14. However, the Intel branch trusted Hayate with solo missions because they didn't know enough about the jutsu that was destroying him from the inside out. "Well, have fun," Hayate said to the Jinchuriki and his friend. "I got to go, or I'll be late, and the stuffy old guy will complain." Naruto chuckled. Matsuda watched Hayate leave from the trees. Genma squatted among the trees, vanishing into the darkness without a word. Beneath his armor, the scroll he had been sent to gather pressed painfully against his side. He heard them approaching, and he stopped breathing when they paused 3 trees away. During lunch, Naruto and Raida talked about chakra. In other words, Raida discovered how little Naruto actually knew about it. With patience, he stated, "It's not chitara, it's chakra. You need it to do ninjutsu and genjutsu, stick to trees, and increase your strength." Raida could stop someone's heart with 2 fingers in the wrong spot, but he could also do it without chakra at a different spot. He went on to say, "It's energy, ignoring the techniques of silent murder. Physical and spiritual. You need to train to increase how much you have, and to increase your control over it." Did you hear a word I just said? A strand of noodle dangled from the side of Naruto's mouth as he looked up from his plate. He nodded enthusiastically and slurped it up. "Chitara is energy and you have to train lots and lots." "Chakra. That's what I said. Chakra, not chitara. But they sound the same." Pulling at his chakra, Genma sealed his trembling hands together. Black spots danced before his eyes, and he was exhausted. He tore it away and concentrated it in his hands, the chakra burning his nerves. He wasted no time in wondering whether he would reach his home. The only thing he wished he had done was to leave without truly saying goodbye. Raida had nothing else to do, so training resumed after lunch. "So before you learn jutsu, you have to control your chakra." "Why?" Raida paused. "Yes, why?" His statement, "because you can't use it otherwise," was a bit repetitious. He continued before Naruto realized his mistake. Hands clasped together, the first 2 fingers of each hand raised. "So, watch this." Around his fingertips, chakra danced. "Cool," exhaled Naruto. Dropping his hands, Raida explained, "Normally, you can't see chakra. It was a simple technique that required very little chakra, but if you focus on turning it into light, that seal can become visible. However, because the seal tied up your hands and the light revealed your position, Anbu mainly avoided using it." Raida pointed to a nearby tree and said, "Staying attached to objects is another basic chakra control exercise you can do. How would you climb that if I tied your hands behind your back?" Naruto scowled. "I don't know," he said at last. "Why would you do that?" "For the sake of training," was Raida's abrupt response. Raida approached the tree and planted a foot on the bark, saying, "You'd climb it with your feet." He moved slowly up the trunk and back down, keeping his body parallel to the ground. Naruto gaped. "You focus chakra in your feet, and use it to stick to the tree." After giving an enthusiastic nod, Naruto paused. "But where is my chakra?" He was baffled by that. "My chakra is where?" It was flowing continuously through Raida's body. He had an instinctive sense of the location and amount of the invisible energy. It simply was. He thought, "This is why I'm not a teacher," and his regard for Chunin who could respond to such a question grew. He asked abruptly, "Naruto, are you enrolled at the academy?" He was old enough, but he had never seen the boy go there. Genma jumped out of the way just in time to avoid the fire jutsu that engulfed his hiding place, landing hard on the vertical trunk of a nearby tree. He pushed more chakra into the crushed joint after feeling his ankle give way once more. Genma dropped to avoid the fire. Wielding bastard as he turned to sweep the area. Because his ankle couldn't withstand the strain, he landed in a roll. Then they were all around him, on the ground. "No," said Naruto. "I asked Sasaki-san once, and she hit me." "Oh. Okay. It was definitely covered by that." Raida said, "Well, chakra is in your body, gradually. Not helpful, you moron. It's energy, and if you do seals, or focus on it, you can move it around." He made another attempt. This was probably not going to work. "Close your eyes. Can you feel your hands?" Naruto opened his eyes. Of course I can. That's a silly question. Close your eyes, and just answer. Yes. Can you feel the muscle inside your hand? Naruto's fingers clenched. Yeah. Can you feel the energy inside the muscle? Yeah, he said softly. Yeah, I can. Is that Chitara? He was not corrected by Raida. He followed along in his own body, flexing the chakra pathways that ran through him. Yes. Now, can you feel it everywhere else too? Follow it up your arm, and into your chest. Can you feel it? Yes. Naruto fumbled for a moment before Raida bent the child's fingers into the proper positions and said, now, pull some of it towards your hands. Okay. Remember that seal I showed you? After a brief period of inaction, Naruto's hands began to glow like a tiny sun. Imagine that the chakra is light, like a fire. The energy is fire. Open your eyes, Naruto. The kunai caught Genma in the shoulder, causing him to jerk forward. He couldn't watch all 6 of them at once because they were all around him. They made no attempt to reclaim the scroll. They would remove it from his body. There was not enough chakra left in him. Goddamn, not enough chakra. Wow, exclaimed Naruto. I didn't know I could do that. I wonder if it's all yours, though. You've got a lot of chakra, Naruto, to make it so bright. Raida moved uncomfortably. It was too simple to overlook the young boy's inner Kyuubi. Yeah, it's brighter than yours. Naruto's glee caused him to lose control of the jutsu. Raida cautioned. Well, how much you have isn't everything. Reduce my ego a little by saying, so let's work on control. Instead of focusing to your hands, put it in your feet. You need just the right amount, and a steady flow. Otherwise you'll fall off. Try climbing the tree. Genma's teeth were exposed. He wasn't going to simply pass away. He was fucking Anbu. After experiencing a lance of pain and a flicker of chakra throughout his entire body, he was behind the person who threw the kunai. The man's head rolled at his feet as a burst of chakra sliced through the spinal cord. His face was sprayed with blood. A victory. His eyes went black. As Naruto attempted to scale the tree, Raida performed push-ups. Wait a minute, was 50, 9, 60, 60.1, 60, 3 correct? He was always tripped by stupidly high numbers. Alright. He would enumerate methods of murder. Numerical idiots. Kunai in the jugular, kidney, femoral artery, spinal cord, garroting wire, burn them with a kaiden, etc. Naruto stood 4 feet or so above the ground. For the first day, not bad. Not good, either. Inhaling poison, Suna .4, Konoha .13, and Iwa .9. Damn, I detest that one. Causes excruciating pain and makes you want to throw up all the time. Yugo's green goop, which she calls dinner, was unnecessary. I apologize, Yugo. Naruto has gained another advantage. Don't forget to cauterize a wound, infection, or gangrene. The wood broke. Keep the flow steady, Naruto. Why'd I keep returning to poisoning when I'm mistaking painkillers, tainted soldier pills, and poison in your food? Does hitting shuriken in the jugular count? I completed kunai already. Stepping on an explosive tag, a nerve cluster in the neck, or wire traps. Naruto was several body lengths above the ground and beginning to feel exhausted by the time Raida started enumerating pressure points. He called out, look, Raida.ni.san, from a broad branch. See how high I got? Raida halted his silent recital and got to his feet. He looked around and saw that it was growing dark. Good work, Naruto. Let's go in for dinner. As he walked calmly back to headquarters, Naruto proclaimed, see, I'm a super good ninja already, and bounced around the older man. I'm so cool. Hitaki was already almost a chunin at your age, Raida told him, so don't get too cocky. They responded more quickly than he had anticipated. However, the young person lacked confidence and paused at the last second. Genma pressed his body against the enemy as he slid under his thrust. The boy was slit open from belly to neck by a sharp upward rip. Genma touched the other, and hot blood soaked his chest. There are 4 left. Compared to last night, the cafeteria was packed. Raida squared his shoulders and got ready to present Naruto with Anbu. Hey, Kinjo. This is Naruto. Naruto, Kinjo. The dark-haired, short man gave a courteous nod. Hello. Miyagi, I want you to meet Uzumaki Naruto. The thin, pale man glared at him. Leave me the hell alone, Namiyashi. Raida hurried away. Yo, Raida. They were just too damned good. Before he could push the body away, he was on the ground with a knife at his neck. Before Genma could get the second kunai up and into the man's chest, it took a deep bite, cutting through blood vessels, skin, and matted hair. After scraping up against the ribs, it discovered cartilage and the soft give that indicated he had struck a lung. The blade ceased its attempt to cut his head off. However, there were still 3 left, and he was bleeding more. He got up with a stutter. Pulling Naruto by one wrist, Raida rushed to the isolated table by the window and asked, "Kakashi, when did you get back?" The boy tugged at his trapped limb and muttered a protest. "Sometime today," the Junin replied hazily, gesturing with his orange book. "Where's everybody else?" After pushing Naruto into a chair, he took one out for himself and said, "On missions. Hayate should be back tonight, though. How did it go?" "Not bad. Ma, Raida, who's this?" Naruto proclaimed. "Uzumaki Naruto," with pride. Raida anxiously awaited his captain's response. He was aware that the person on the left employed genjutsu. He was aware that he lacked the chakra necessary to escape if he was discovered. He was aware that he would be unable to avoid the jutsu created by the seals the other one was hastily forming. At his back, he couldn't stop the brief wish for Raida. Kakashi didn't even flicker his half-lidded eye. "Uzumaki Naruto," he said again, sardonic. "Any word on a replacement yet?" Raida blinked. He had anticipated a response of some kind. Perhaps feelings of rejection and disgust, or perhaps a surge of affection and warmth for his teacher's only son. Not total indifference. Which, Raida realized, really shouldn't come as a surprise. Considering that's how he handles 97% of the population. If you don't include deceased people, make that 99. "No," was his automatic response. "You got anyone in mind?" Kakashi gave a shrug. "No," the discussion ended. Trying to think of something to say, Raida fiddled with his chopsticks. Fortunately, Naruto was with them. "Ni-san says you were a chunin when you were my age. That's cool." Kakashi's gaze shifted sideways to concentrate on the yellow head speaking to him from just above the edge of the table. "HN?" Followed by, "Ni-san?" Raida's shoulder twitched. "That's what he calls me." Naruto interrupted and said, "So since you're so good, will you teach me? 'Cause I'm gonna be a super ninja?" For a while, Kakashi gazed at him. "No, please? I don't teach." Raida's eyebrows went up one. Naruto sulked. Kakashi said, "I kill people," with a bright smile on his face. "I don't teach." Genma felt the trailing end of his saliva catch on his chin as he spat blood into the dirt. He began to leave as the last bodies were scattered among the trees. Just before he fell, he heard bone crackle in his ankle. "Cut the crap, Hitaki," Raida had commanded. He was impatient with Kakashi's antics. Kakashi looked at him sulkily. Raida had never been able to figure out how Kakashi could pout with just one eye and 3 square inches of skin. Pushing his chair back from the table, Kakashi got up and said, "Don't be so mean, Namiyashi. Taiko." Or slumped. He raised his free hand in a languid farewell as the orange book flicked open in front of his already hidden face. He hardly touched his bowl of rice and said, "See you later." Raida thought, well, that could have gone better, while Naruto talked non-stop about mouthfuls of rice and stir-fried food. Raida mentioned something about orange, or perhaps it's cats now. I suppose it could have gone worse. He had carefully selected the individuals he had introduced Naruto to upon their arrival, and the responses had been conflicting. While some had been truly friendly, the majority had been distantly polite. Instead of addressing Naruto, Miyagi's, "Get the hell away from me," was aimed at the world. And Raida specifically. Although Miyagi had some nasty moods, he was an extremely skilled fighter. However, Naruto had not missed the few icy glances that had been directed at them. There was nothing Raida could do about Kakashi, Hitaki, but he was Kakashi. Naruto started to yawn and went out to the apartment buildings behind the main headquarters. Raida reset the seals and escorted him to his room. More exhausted than his uneventful day deserved, he collapsed on his own bed. He reminded himself to register Naruto at the academy as he drifted off to sleep. He would benefit from training. He was awakened by a knock on his door. The entire corridor must have been awakened by the cries, "Raida! Raida, get the hell up!" Rubbing sleep from his eyes, Raida threw open the door. He recognized the boy who had woken him up at 3 in the morning and demanded, "The hell, Hayate?" "It's Genma," he exclaimed, his eyes wide with fear. "He's home." Too tired, hurt, and bleeding to continue, Genma collapsed into the Anbu doors. The metal doors swung back to gently tap his shoulders after opening inward. When the rookie at the desk noticed him, he slammed his hand into the medic's red button. He stumbled for his dog tags as he flitted to the side of the fallen man. 035. He went straight to the name, ignoring the remaining numbers. Genma Shiranui. He was Squad 14, wasn't he? A shadow clone and a quick hand signal were rushing toward the stairs. Wasn't Hayate 14 as well? The rookie was aware that the medics would arrive too late because Shiranui was bleeding out all over the floor. Reaching out to take Genma's hand, Raida fell to his knees next to his friend. He had pushed his way between the medical staff who were encircling the injured man, defying their orders to keep out of his way. "Stay with me, you bastard. Do you hear me, Genma? Don't you fucking die." Uneasy, Hayate hovered at the edge of the chaos. Of them all, Hayate had been closest to Masaru, the final deceased teammate. He had not chewed his fingernails since he was a young boy. Crimson welled against pale skin as teeth tore into flesh. The medic with his hands over his heart yelled something, but Genma's eyes remained closed. Bright green light flared. Someone asked, "What's his blood type?" "A positive," said Raida calmly. The medic who was reaching for the dog tags dropped them and moved on, saying, "He's a positive." In an instant, he returned with a needle and 2 bags of blood. Raida's eyes were too dry and burning. "Shiranui, fuck you. Please don't fucking die. Get operating room 6 primed. I'm losing the pulse, some help here." No one paid attention to the blonde-haired head over blue eyes that hovered in the doorway to the stairs, staring at the scene unfolding on the black tile of ANBU's floor under pale fluorescent lights. When the medics finally hurried Shiranui to the hospital, the rookie slouched against the desk and nervously ran a hand through his hair. The pool of blood dripping over the tile was met with an indifferent glare from his feline mask. Suppressing a shiver, he went to locate the mops in the closet behind the desk. Naruto squatted on the ground after slipping out of the shadows. Red dripped from his clenched fist as he traced his stubby fingers through the cooling liquid. Although he didn't fully comprehend, he felt like crying because Ni-san and Hayate-san were both upset. That shouldn't be the case for his family, friends, or people. That was not how he would allow them to be. When Hitaki arrived, Raida was slouched in the hallway outside the operating room. Hayate had departed in search of coffee. His words, "You're late," were too tired to be angry. Hitaki said, "Sorry," and his tone was one of sincere regret. After giving a quick nod, Raida lowered his head into his hands. He grimaced as his left finger trailed over thick scar tissue. Fucking scars. Genma is fucking dying. Without glancing at Raida, Kakashi muttered, hands stuffed deep in his pockets, "How is he?" "Don't know." Quiet. A clock ticking away. Hayate brought coffee back. Time went by. With bloody hands, tired faces, and needles and tubes, the medics came and went at regular intervals. They remained silent. The Anbu did not inquire. When Yugo showed up with her purple hair in a mess, nobody spoke. She sat quietly on the bench by Hayate and bowed as she came. Tightly, the teenagers clasped hands. Raida hoped Hayate would gather himself. He nearly growled at the youngster. Rather, he shut his eyes. Hours later, Genma was wheeled out by the medics, breathing but unconscious, wearing a plain hospital shirt, and with too many tubes protruding from him. The doors opened, and Yugo suppressed a shriek. The body was too small and too pale, so they pushed the gurney down the hall. Kakashi's gaze remained apathetic. Genma opened his eyes to pain. When he moved, dull throbs turned into incapacitating pain. He slowly opened his eyes, anticipating Hell's arrival. There was a flash of yellow in the corner, and Raida dozing close by. Raida passed out at the foot of the bed, his head resting on his arms. No, not Hell. Hospital. Alive. He closed his eyes. 4 days, Hayate informed him upon his subsequent awakening. He pointed to the figure of their team's eldest member sprawled out over a corner armchair and said, "And he won't leave." Genma coughed instead of speaking. It was made more difficult by the gentle breeze of oxygen the rubber tubing was squirting into his nose. Hayate bent to look into his eyes. "You don't look so good." He gave his friend a grimace. "Would you mind rubbing it in?" A white-clad nurse was leaning over him and inserting a needle into his IV line when the door was opened. Genma dozed off once more. Panic struck when he opened his eyes in the dark. When a tiny hand slid into his own, he stopped flailing and paused in an attempt to get away from the enemies that plagued his thoughts. Tied down, can't move, hurt alone, they're coming, he can't. A hand. He wasn't by himself. A stern voice drifted through the silent hospital corridors. "It's been nearly 6 days. He's healthy enough to talk." The voice said, "The longest he's been conscious is 10 minutes at a time," with concern. 2 men, one dressed in black and inverted shadow and the other in the white uniform of a medic, rounded the corner. The only features on his ivory mask were 2 eyelets and a barely curved oval shape. I don't care, yelled the Anbu. Just give me the medication. The medic's face was grim, but he was almost running to keep up with the other's long stride. Anbu-san, this is really not a good idea. Waking him up like this is not good for his recovery. That was an order, the expressionless mask stated unfriendlily. Then, get out of my way, dear. With his mask pulled down over his face, the short Anbu refused to back down. He firmly said, Frog.san is sleeping. Anbu.san, closing the hospital room door. He raised a hand as though to strike the boy in front of him, saying, get out of my way. The deer remained motionless. The fist shattered, he's sleeping. The sound of the deer's head snapping sideways echoed down the hallway. The doctor winced. Anbu.san, please. Deer made a dry coughing noise that started out softly and got louder until it sounded like he was hacking out his lungs. He remained in the same spot. This is insubordination, dear. Get the hell out of my way, or I'll have to report you. Fuck you, Niigata, he wiped his throat. Genma's not ready to debrief. Niigata snarled, I'll determine whether he's prepared, dear. With a hiss, the door opened, revealing Raida's weary face. A pause, Hayate, what is going on? Hayate said, it's Niigata, as his coughing stopped. He still had a scratchy voice. The man said, out, Namiyashi, and get your fucking mask on. I'm not in uniform, retorted Raida. Go the hell away, Niigata. Genma's barely stable. He's been stable for 6 days, Namiyashi. We need the report, now. I don't care if you are goddamn twins or whatever. Move. Or do I have to have you removed? His tone became hazardous. Anger glaring in his bloodshot eyes, Raida moved away from the door. But he made a conciliatory gesture with his hands. He encircled the younger man's bicep with his fingers and said, no need for that. Come on, Hayate. He smiled viciously and said, but if anything goes wrong, Niigata, I'll personally eviscerate you. The scar was beneficial. After grabbing a syringe from the displeased physician, the intel agent shut the sliding door. He hurriedly injected the transparent liquid into the tube that was pumping fluid into the Anbu, who was unconscious. Genma's eyes flickered open after a minute. His body and head ached. Genma's eyes slowly shifted to the mask with no features as Niigata snapped his fingers in front of his face. Oh no, his first clear thought was not this. This is your debriefing, Agent O358.974.002, for Mission KX.004.734.6210. We retrieved the scroll, so it was officially successful. Please describe the mission in detail. Gritting his teeth, Genma forced himself to resist the urge to curse the intel agent and leave the room. It wouldn't function. He coughed, I inhaled a trembling breath. I left Konoha in mid-morning. Arrived at target around nightfall. Stop. A longer pause before saying, acquired the scroll. Came home. He desired Niigata's departure. Or he was too weak and wanted his mask. He wished Niigata would leave him alone before he lost his temper. Niigata loomed over him, a blank mask, a stark room. Niigata let out a deep sigh. He had been troubled when word of Genma's return had crept into the intel offices, and he liked Squad 14, even going so far as to call them close friends. However, they could be extremely annoying. I need a little more detail, Genma. The wounded man's eyes became distracted. A patch of wall behind Niigata's shoulder caught his attention. Again, the other agent waved a hand before his eyes. Shiranui. His voice was emotionless as he stated, I entered the house 2 hours after nightfall, after recon. Took out 3 guards, not ninja. 2 Chunin were in the scroll room. I killed them both. Coughing. Wheeze. Scroll was easy to find. Planted the evidence like I was supposed to. Sustained minor injuries escaping. Why? Niigata glared as Genma's gaze returned to his mask. Because I fucked up, okay. Someone sensed my chakra, or found the bodies, or, I don't know. 8 of them chased me out of the mansion. I cracked my ankle bad. Followed me into the forest, lost a few with a cage buncheon. Couple skirmishes, then they surrounded me. He took a deep breath. He muttered, do you need to know more? Continue, please. He shut his eyes. I took a couple hits, killed a few, went down, stillness. Genma. What? Keep talking. Fuck you. I killed them, okay. Exploded their fucking bodies all over the fucking place, happy? Then you came home. Yes. This was an A rank, Shiranui, but the danger level was rather low. You shouldn't have sustained such serious injuries. I was ordered to evaluate whether this was attempted mission suicide. Genma couldn't help but curse at him this time. Niigata endured the outburst. Finally, Genma growled, "I wouldn't have returned if I wanted to kill myself, bastard. Get the hell out of here." Niigata got up, collected his notes, and walked away. He scowled at the three ninja huddled against the wall across the hall. Hitaki was slouching against the white tiles, holding his vulgar book open in front of his nose, and he looked too casual. Niigata could tell the boy was glaring daggers at Hayate beneath the mask because he was actually trembling. Blank porcelain could not conceal Raida's evil expression, and Niigata returned it from the protection of his own mask. Between them, this incident would not be quickly forgotten. But he had to fulfill his obligation. He also had no intention of leaving as the loser. "You both are guilty of blatant insubordination and interfering with Anbu orders," he said, turning to face Hayate and Raida. After concluding his tirade, he pivoted on his heel and strode off. All the way down the hall, he could feel the eyes of Squad 14 burning holes in his back. Genma said, "You can come out now," to the empty room. At least he was smart enough to keep his presence a secret from Niigata. From the nest of blankets in the room's corner, the young boy protruded his head. "Hi," he said cheerfully before scuttling from his makeshift bed. Genma kept a wary eye on him. With his hands stuffed in his shorts pockets, Naruto bounded over to the bed and stood beside him. He questioned, "You don't like that guy, do you?" Dryly, "Not right now," Genma replied. He had connected the dots between the Kyuubi boy in front of him and the hand in the dark. He also questioned why the Kyuubi brat would have offered him consolation. So Genma.ni.san. The boy could even see him flinch. Naruto ceased speaking. "Ni.san. See me, Genma.ni.san. Genma.ni.san. Come play tag. I love you, Genma.ni.san. Ni.san. Please don't let me die. Please, Ni.san. I don't want to die." Genma couldn't control the half-formed sob that was in his throat. "For heaven's sake, stop talking," he yelled at the voices inside his head and at himself. "Just get out of here." He was crying, even though he had promised himself that he would stop. The face with the whiskers was staring at him. "Kyuubi." Naruto backed away, his lips trembling as he bumped into the distant wall. "I'm sorry," he said in a whisper. "I'm sorry." Genma ignored the pain that rushed through his body as he levered himself up on an elbow. He refused to allow Kyuubi. With his arms up in front of him, Naruto was flinching against the wall, and despite the fog of terror, agony and sorrow, residual anger, and the drugs clogging his blood, Genma managed to see the boy. Back against the bed he fell. "Fuck," he said in a whisper. He slid hot, salty water down his cheeks and said, "Fuck it all." "Naruto," he uttered softly. It was his first time using the name, and he was still unsure of his feelings about it. "Naruto, I'm sorry." The door opened. Naruto's gaze swiftly shifted to the doorway, where his guard entered the room. Genma pondered whether it was simply too late and that she had lost the capacity to feel anything. Genma had already made a mistake too big to undo, and Naruto would do whatever he wanted. Genma didn't get it, innocent boy, Kyuubi container. However, he closed his eyes in embarrassment, knowing that he had done something that could not be forgiven. The expression on Naruto's face suggests that he might have tried mission suicide after all. He could then visit his brother, express regret for betraying him. However, Genma was unsure of which betrayal he would ask for forgiveness for. Would you rather feel sorry for the Kyuubi container or almost kill the child? A small hand slipped into his. Genma.san. The concept of forgiveness is complex, and Genma had never fully understood it. He harbored an unwavering hatred for the village hidden in the rocks and its inhabitants. They had left him with fear that would never go away and scars that would never heal. More than ever, he detested the Kyuubi. However, Naruto immediately and fully forgave him, and he vowed never to be harmed again in his high, childlike voice. Never. Genma squeezed the young boy's hand while Raida looked on in disbelief from the doorway. His only possible response was, "I'm sorry." The sun was shining brightly on the calm morning as the wind blew gently through the trees. The breeze was a welcome relief from the slightly warm air. With his katana resting on his knees, Hayate relaxed against a rock in one of Anbu's restricted training grounds while taking in the peaceful chirping of birds and the gentle sway of grass in the light wind. As Genma hobbled into the field on crutches, his customary senbon dangling from his lips, he glanced up. With his nose hidden behind an orange cover, Kakashi trailed behind by a step or two. It was nearly the ideal moment, minus the crutches and the heavy brace around Genma's ankle. After pausing to wave a hand at Hayate, Genma continued walking slowly toward the rock. "Hey, Haya.kun. Kakashi cut in, is the replacement here yet? Sheathing his katana on his back, Hayate stood up elegantly after shaking his head. Masks hung at their waists, and all three wore Anbu armor, though Genma's was brand new. Neither is Raida, Hayate went on to say. Kakashi said, he'll be late, with ease. Genma and Hayate exchanged a sly smile. Hayate asked, where is he? He added in jest, he's usually on time, though you wouldn't know. Kakashi gave him a sulky look. You're so mean, Hayate. He's dropping Naruto off at school. Rigidly gripping Naruto's hand, Raida stood at the academy's gate. The boy was yanking away, eager to enter. They had registered yesterday, and Raida had purchased a new T-shirt for him for the first day of classes. Raida signed all the parent, legal guardian lines, and when the Chunin objected, he threatened him with the Hokage. Be good, Naruto, Raida discreetly warned. Over his Anbu uniform, he had thrown on a green flak jacket and a long-sleeved shirt to cover up the stark armor and the obvious spiral tattoo. He knelt down and embraced Naruto with one arm before giving him a pat on the back. You'll do great. Bye. Raida.ni.san. Naruto. Wait here after school, and I'll come pick you up. Don't leave with anyone other than me, Hayate, or Kakashi, do you hear me? With an indulgent smile, Raida said, yep, ni.san, as the boy hurried away. He was late for the meeting, so he jumped to the rooftops and rushed back to Anbu. Naruto surveyed the somewhat crowded schoolyard. Parents and kids were standing all over the courtyard, with some of them slowly making their way to the building's entrance. A cute girl with short pink hair was hugging her parents when Naruto noticed her. After her father combed her hair, she hurried off in the direction of the school. She pointedly turned her head away as she walked past another girl with blonde hair. Then Naruto jogged over after spotting a boy his own age standing unsurely by the wall. Hey. The boy with the dark hair glanced over with suspicion. Who are you? Uzumaki Naruto. What's your name? Inuzuka Kiba. Are you new here, too? He glared at the gate, where a short woman with wild, dark hair was lounging carelessly against the pillars, and said, yeah. She gave him a sly smile. He said to Naruto, my mom is forcing me to come even though I don't want to. I'm already a good ninja. Yeah, well, I'm a great ninja, Naruto snapped back, and I want to get better. Huh, you're not a great ninja. Naruto pushed, what, how would you know? He scrunched his eyes shut and clasped his hands together in the seal Raida.ni.san had shown him. Watch this, he said. Ha, he exclaimed, beat that. Kiba Inuzuka snorted. That's lame. Watch this. He growled and made two seals. His fingernails grew longer until they resembled claws. Ha yourself. Naruto sprinted at the wall and climbed 3 feet before falling off, saying, well, this is cooler. Bet you can't do that. The academy blew a sharp whistle to end their competition. With an arm raised, a young Chunin yelled, new students, please come over here. To the group of children aged 5 and 6. Class is about to begin. After exchanging looks, Kiba and Naruto both smiled. Race you, suggested Naruto. They pulled up short just under the Chunin's nose, almost trampling him. Genma replied, I thought school started tomorrow, as he turned to look at his captain. I saw Quartermaster to pick up my new gear, and he said his daughter didn't go in until tomorrow. I think he's looking forward to it, he said dryly. A day later, Kakashi told him, the older students start. Tenten's already been studying for a year. Oh, and Genma. What was all that about mission? Suicide a few days ago. Genma's gaze expanded. Kakashi, you bastard, you were eavesdropping? Yup. The ninja gave his commander a fierce look before turning it on Hayate. You too? No, objected Hayate, but I couldn't stop him. Kakashi eyed the senbon Genma had clamped between his lips and said, it's my business, as your captain, without being bothered. It appeared as though the older Junin would spit it into his eye. Niigata and the intel jerks are out of their minds, he said. Something went wrong, I don't know what, but I certainly didn't do it on purpose. Kakashi stated, that's what I thought, with a serious expression. If they get on your case again, tell me. Responding, I can handle it myself, Genma said. However, the rage left his face. This is squad business, Genma, Kakashi informed him. If you get pulled out by Psyche, we're going to be short another man again. Genma's eyes widened as the senbon halted its effortless movement once more. Hitaki. He began, but their 5th member interrupted him abruptly. I apologize for being late, Senpai, the young man exclaimed. In a desperate attempt to contain his laughter, Kakashi began to cough. Hayate blinked, surprised. The boy's rabbit mask, which he wore while grimacing, was an odd mix of cute and crazy. Genma's jaw fell open. What did you do to Quartermaster to deserve that? Self. Consciously, the boy repositioned the mask. It's only temporary, he bowed his head and said softly. There weren't any others. Kakashi boastfully remarked. Temporary can be anywhere from a day to years. He abruptly added, get used to it, bunny. Chan. Anyways, what are you doing here? The face of the bunny cocked to one side. He questioned, isn't this squad 14? I was told to come here for training. A rookie? Genma questioned disbelievingly. They gave us a rookie? I was a rookie, said Hayate. Yeah, Genma said in a sour tone, and Hayate winced. Bunny. Mask twitched a little after the conversation. Sorry. Oh, shut up Hayate. It's not your fault. Rookies are good. We can train him up to be just as cracked as the rest of us. Crisis avoided. So, Bunny. Chan, said Kakashi. When did you join? 2 days ago, was Bunny. Mosk's courteous response. And what are your specialties? Ninjutsu, he replied right away. Taijutsu is fine, so is my genjutsu, but I mostly fight with ninjutsu. Elemental. Mokuton. There was a tense silence. At last, Kakashi whispered, oh. Wood. That's interesting. The bunny mask winced. I should have realized I wouldn't fit in. Kakashi went on, well, I'd like to see that, but we're still waiting on Falcon to arrive, so how about we have a demonstration when he gets here? Bunny. Mask gave a nod. On the inside, he wasn't sure if that was rejection, acceptance, or apology. It didn't really matter. Obviously not. Hayate. How about you two spar a bit? Hand to hand, put away that katana. The katana slid back into the sheath that was fastened behind Deer. Mosk's shoulders. Yes, Captain. Welcome to the Ninja Academy, the Chunin, who was standing at the front of the large classroom, said brightly. With their eyes fixed on their new sensei, 20 or so kids sat in threes behind the desk rows. In your time here, you will learn to be shinobi. We cover the basic arts of taijutsu, hand-to-hand fighting, genjutsu, illusions to fool the senses, and ninjutsu, shinobi techniques. When you graduate, you will be full-fledged Konoha shinobi. Your path starts now. He was beaming at the children present. Today, we will do a basic evaluation of your skills. Don't worry, we don't expect you to know anything yet. We'll start with taijutsu. Follow me outside. Hayate wasn't particularly good at unarmed combat. Without a blade in his hand, he felt exposed, but that did not make him weak. They began slowly, hitting, blocking, spinning, kicking, ducking, and hitting again. The speed gradually increased until the individual moves could only be followed by a Junin. Rabbit had Hayate pinned to the ground with one arm twisted behind his back after 3 minutes. He gave the arm a little more pressure. Do you yield? Hayate vanished into a cloud of smoke. Genma called out, hey, no jutsu, Haya, from his hilltop position. Rabbit was upset. Why couldn't he use Bunshin jutsu if Deer could? When Hayate emerged from the row of trees bordering the field, the animosity vanished. His face was turning a nasty shade of gray as he coughed hard. Then he gasped, sorry. About that. And Budatsan. Just need a minute. Kakashi ordered, sit down, and slipped his book into his pouch after snapping it shut. You should have said something. The hand that was not in front of his mouth was waved by Hayate. I'll be fine, he insisted, swallowing the subsequent coughs despite the shaking throughout his body. I'm ready to go on. Genma slid off the rock and hobbled over, saying, you're not going on. Bunny. Face. Spar with me. Kakashi's lone eye rolled. They grudgingly obeyed, saying, idiots. Genma, sit down. Hayate, sit down. This isn't a mission. Kakashi slouched over to the rookie after lowering his gaze to follow them down. Come on, Bunny. Chan. The rookie did not have the racking coughs, but his breathing was nearly as heavy as Hayate's. He raised his hands in a protective stance and bided his time until Kakashi launched his assault. He got off to a fast start. In an instant, Kakashi slammed a clenched fist towards his opponent's neck behind him. The rookie was now unbalanced and had hardly had time to register the movement and dodge. Hitaki followed right away, testing the boy's limits and keeping him on the verge of collapse. Long after he had the opportunity to pin the rookie, Kakashi continued to drag the fight out. Not even winded, he sighed at last, pressing the rabbit mask into the dirt. He said icily, you need to practice, to the novice. You're not good enough. Hayate tossed a bottle of pills into Genma's lap and walked to where he sat on the rock beside him, still coughing occasionally. Take these. And you need to practice, too. Hayate took the tablets. Kakashi, these. Kakashi cut Hayate off when he said, Raida is the only one of any of you with remotely good taijutsu right now. The voice of Hayate rose. Kakashi, where did you get these? The rookie caught the copy. Ninzai. I'll talk with you later, Hayate. Genma added, we've got time to practice, in response to Kakashi's jab at taijutsu. We've got 1 week, Kakashi stated in a brief statement. Hayate inserted the pills into his weapons pouch and asked, 1 week? Genma's not going to be mission.fit by then. 7 days, said Kakashi again. You better be, Genma. That's all they're giving us. The teacher said, can someone explain what chakra is? Naruto held up a hand. He was thrilled that Ni-san had clarified this. Anyone? Naruto gestured with his hand. How about you, Inuzuka-kun? What is chakra? Kiba looked up from his desk. Huh? The Chunin was growing irritated and said, explain chakra, Inuzuka-kun. Oh. Chakra. It's fire stuff you do jutsu with. It makes you strong. My mom has lots. Naruto's hand shot up once more, saying, not quite, Inuzuka-kun. As he spoke to the boy with the black hair, the teacher's voice became squeaky. How about you, Uchiha-san? Naruto scowled. He was aware of the solution. The Uchiha gazed down at the Chunin teacher with dissatisfied eyes. Chakra is spiritual energy that a good shinobi can train for increased control and power. It is used in ninjutsu, such as Kaiden jutsus. He stared at the instructor. The teacher exclaimed, perfect, Sasuke-san. Disgruntled, Naruto slid back in his chair. Sasuke. Bastard made a mistake. It was both physical and spiritual energy. It had been said by Ni-san. Hey, Raida. Sorry I'm late, the ninja in the falcon mask said. Just outside the training ground, he had taken off his shirt and flak jacket and put on his mask. He said, hello, to the new ninja. I'm Raida. Tenzo, said the rabbit mask. It wasn't until much later that the other ninja realized they hadn't asked his name. Kakashi took out his book once more and said, well, Tenzo, Raida, how about you two do some genjutsu practice? Hayate, you're ref. Incredulously, Hayate repeated, ref. What? Kakashi ignored him because he was too engrossed in his book. Whatever, mumbled Hayate. Go, I guess. Tenzo leapt away from Raida and started to form seals. But Raida trailed behind him and jammed 2 fingers into his exposed neck. Although Tenzo rolled away, Raida was prepared for the next time because he had assessed Tenzo's chakra levels in the instant of contact, even though the strike wasn't hard enough to cause any harm. I thought this was genjutsu training, Tenzo exclaimed, squatting defensively. It is, confirmed Raida. He decided he couldn't allow the rookie to gain confidence. Perception changed as 2 seals appeared. Tenzo raised his hands in recognition, as anyone higher than Chunin should. Kai. However, Raida had only required a single seal for that tactic, and before the child had completed his counter, he was behind Tenzo, putting a hand to his neck. That would be cruel, not Shikaku's jutsu. Tenzo discovered that his skin was sloughing off, melting, and burning beneath his clutching hands. His throat was collapsing, and he had no chakra left to attempt to counter, so he refrained from screaming after his chakra vanished. After speaking with Naruto, Raida added that, where is my chakra? After a few seconds, Raida released him. With his hands gripping his throat and his breath coming in sharp gasps, Tenzo was on his knees. The sound of porcelain hitting paper caught both of their attention. Kakashi had used his orange book to slap his masked forehead. Desperately, he declared, we are going to be slaughtered. Raida tilted his mask back to reveal his face and looked at him curiously, asking, what? He didn't like being reminded of how he got the scar, even though he had come to terms with it. Ghosts of burning tickled his mind, and he cursed himself, wondering why he had used that specific genjutsu on the rookie. 1 week, Hayate informed him, pulling his mask back as well. He anticipated Raida to object, claiming there wasn't enough time for the rookie, but he said, we've got a mission. But instead, the man asked, what about Naruto? Hey, Kiba. Want to eat lunch together? Sure, replied the other boy. Let's find Shikamaru, he's nice. As they hurried from the classroom, they discovered Shikamaru and Choji strolling leisurely in the direction of the school's perimeter wall. Kiba shouted, hey, Shika, and waved wildly. The slender boy turned to face his big friend, who smiled and waved back. Kiba presented Naruto to their classmates. He said to Naruto, My mom's friends with their moms. Hey, how come I never saw you around before? Naruto gave a shrug. I guess I was somewhere else, he speculated, but we can be friends, now. With his head tilted upward, Shikamaru reclined on the ground. Choji took a bag of chips out. He ate the first one and said, "Want some?" After Kiba snatched up a big handful, Choji presented them to Naruto. He drank 3. Shikamaru also took one, and the two of them snacked together. The expression that covered the exposed area of Kakashi's face did not sit well with Raida. He lowered his book as his innocently curved eye rose. Ignoring his misgivings about Kakashi, Raida rushed on, saying, "I don't want to leave him alone, especially not on his first week of school." When Hayate said he could stay with Quartermaster, his kid goes to academy. Raida objected, but he doesn't live at HQ. The statement, Naruto would be alone, is risky. How about Guy? Kakashi proposed, continuing the naive gesture, he would protect Naruto. Raida went pale. Not Guy. Don't Guy, please. That could work, Genma thought. Guy's going to be around HQ until his ribs heal. But how long are we going to be gone for, Kakashi? Only a week or so. 10 days at the most. Raida inserted, if everything goes right, with acidity. And he'll have Naruto spouting off about youth and springtime by that time, he stated in a dejected tone. Curious, Tenzo said. Naruto? The temperature of the emotions fell below freezing. Tenzo was still sitting on the grass, and 4 sets of eyes were focused on his masked face. Yes? Raida muttered. As in the Kyuubi container? Tenzo asked hesitantly, knowing full well that he was entering a hazardous situation. Still grinning, Kakashi questioned, is that a problem? Tenzo rushed to reassure them. No, of course not, I just didn't know you knew him. Do you? Asked Hayate courteously. Tenzo shifted uneasily and said, not really. Beneath the polite voices were sharp blades. Calmly, he's important to us, Kakashi said. The threat was not lost on Tenzo. Let's call it quits for now, Kakashi proposed. After giving his orders, he grabbed Hayate's arm and said, Hayate, I need to talk to you. Bunny. Face, you need to train more, but make sure you're healthy for the mission. Why don't you go set things up with Guy, Raida? He pulled the shorter man away and said, we're meeting here again at 6 tomorrow for real training. Away from his teammates, in the trees, Hayate fingered the pill bottle in his pouch. Kakashi. Taiko. He said, they're from Mist, without warning. He had actually taken a 3-day detour to obtain the medication, which is why he said, my last mission took me by there. Hayate whispered, doesn't this violate the treaty with Grass? Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Disregard the treaty. Hayate needed the medication, and Grass was not going to find out. He refused to allow his teammate to perish due to some nonsensical clauses in a fictitious peace treaty. They worked last time you took them, right? Yes, but... Then I don't care about the treaty. No one needs to know. Thank you, Taiko. Raida offered the rookie a helping hand on the training field. The boy was hauled to his feet by him. Tenzo removed his mask, still trembling slightly. Thanks. He said, no problem. You want to get lunch? Sure, Tenzo said, taken aback by the generosity. Yo, Genma, you coming? Genma gave a headshake. He got up slowly and picked up his crutches, saying, I've got an appointment with the medics. And with the mission so soon, I better not miss it. He leered and added, have fun, just for kicks. Tenzo reddened. Genma hobbled off in the direction of the hospital, satisfied. Raida and Tenzo started to return to headquarters. Raida said amiably, so what did you do to deserve us? I mean, they don't stick just anyone on Squad 14. Tenzo reddened once more. Shocked, he said, you think I'm good enough? After that, I feel completely incompetent. Raida gave him a doubtful glance. You are, what? Totally incompetent. But don't worry, Hayate was too, when we got him. This resulted in a nasty situation, a lengthy history of accusations, and a lack of interest at headquarters. But I know why we got Hayate. So who wants you dead? Tenzo could only say it again. What? Oh, come on. You've heard the gossips. Tenzo rambled. No I haven't. What? I've only been here 2 days. Raida grinned bitterly. So I guess I get the honors, huh? You really are a rookie. We're Squad 14. It's where they send the rejects. Tenzo looked at him. No one cares if we don't make it back. But what about Kakashi? Senpai, he's a legend. Of course he is. He's an amazing, elite, emotionally screwed up genius with personal problems bigger than the Hokage monument. It makes him unpredictable, and thus dangerous. Not to mention the whole stolen bloodline issue. Tenzu's mouth dropped open. With hesitation, he tried, what about Hayate? Hayate. He's one of the most promising gecko swordsmen in the past couple of generations. Physically screwed up. He can't take solo missions, and half the time he's a liability to whatever team he's on. Raida looked at Tenzo. Still want to be on our squad? With a morbid fascination for this glimpse of his new teammates, he asked, what about Genma? Genma is a remarkable shinobi, and a great person. But he's been considered mentally unstable since he was a genin. And no one wants to spend the effort to deal with his problems. Easier to stick him here. Tenzo choked out, are you serious? Genma didn't appear to be crazy, but he had always admired Hitaki since he was a young child and had never considered the possibility that he was emotionally screwed up, as Raida had so blatantly stated. Tenzo lacked the guts to confront Raida about his membership in Squad 14. And people actually want you guys to die? Raida gave a shrug. Raida reflected bitterly, not actively, I suppose, but it's not big loss to other people if we kick the bucket. When Masaru bought it, nobody outside of 6 or 7 Anbu had given a damn. He was no longer a danger to regular people and was now safely dust. Masaru, who loves blue flowers and has a big smile. Well, a threat. Several organs performed a somersault inside Tenzo. When he was finally accepted to Anbu and placed on Hitaki Kakashi's team, he was overjoyed. It seems that the council was merely attempting to get rid of him once more. With a mutter, hell. Raida reassured him, don't worry, though, we take care of our own. Yeah, he said without meaning to. The council was eager for him to move aside. A little twist ran through his heart. Maybe, he had thought, but no, obviously not. He was and would remain a freak. So, Raida gently nudged, what about you? His words were bitter. Huh, oh, I'm an embarrassing experiment, he said, I guess I fit. Raida wrapped the boy's shoulders with an arm. Welcome to the club, Tenzo. Don't let it get you down. He laughed, we're the best. Genma Dotsan. For the past minute or so, Genma had been aware that the man in the trees was pursuing him back towards the village. What do you want? She asked. Too friendly, he inquired. How's the leg? Genma disliked Matsuda, so she said, fine. The man always took spars too far and stood too close. Additionally, he detested Raida, which was sufficient justification for him to be permanently added to Genma's enemy list. When Matsuda asked, can you believe this business with the Kyuubi, Genma? He shook his head in the negative. Letting the monster into Anbu headquarters. I don't know what the head was thinking. Genma would have smashed Matsuda's face in if he hadn't been still recuperating from a broken ankle, chakra depletion, and 10 days in the hospital bed. The man barely avoided the kunai as it was. Keep your hands off Naruto, he growled viciously, or I'll kill you. Genma, you're talking about the Kyuubi. It killed your family, Genma, your brother. I'm talking about Naruto, bastard. He then smothered the doubt that was beginning to grow inside of him. You of all people, Genma. However, he raised his hands in surrender when Genma's head suddenly turned to face him. Matsuda turned and flitted away into the trees, saying, all right. But I warn you, Genma. You're making a mistake. That thing is the Kyuubi, and always will be. With a curse, Genma struck the closest tree with her fist. He continued to stalk toward the hospital while muttering vile derogatory remarks. With an angry wave, Naruto said, bye Shikamaru. See you tomorrow. Bye Choji. Kiba and he said as they waited to be picked up at the school's gate. You guys are great, Naruto said with a smile as he settled on the ground. Kiba smiled back, his teeth jutting out like fangs. He ran toward the woman who had dropped him off, who had the same red fangs tattooed on her cheeks as Kiba, and exclaimed, yeah. Hey, that's my mom. I got to go. Bye, Naruto. As they walked away, he pointed back at Naruto while chatting with her. Her eyes narrowed as she looked back. However, because Raida had fallen from the roofs and landed in front of the gate, Naruto was unable to see. Ready to go home, Naruto? With hesitation, Raida knocked on Aoba's door. Since Guy's room had been unoccupied, his team captain's room was the next obvious place to check. Indeed, wearing skin-tight mesh, Mitarashi Anko opened the door. When she spotted him, she smirked and leaned suggestively against the doorway. Hello, Raida.kun. With a serious tone, Raida inquired, is Guy in? Anko was roughly Hayate's age, trying too hard at just 17. Sure he is. We've just been having a 5-way party, she said. Behind her shoulder, fully clothed, Aoba emerged. Who are you harassing this time? Anko. Hi, Rida. Need something? Is Guy here? Aoba took hold of Anko's shoulder and dragged her back into the room, saying, yeah. Come on in. Stop harassing the visitors, Midarashi-chan. The young man frowned. Let me go, Aoba. Guy, get over here. You've got a visitor. Grinning, the third member of Aoba's team hurried out of the kitchen. He paused, embarrassed, and said, who is it? Ah, Kakashi. Sans friend. What was your name again? He glanced uneasily at the gleaming young man before him and said, Namiyashi Rida. Even in the dark, smoke-filled air of Aoba's rooms, his teeth gleamed as he grinned. He felt uneasy around Guy. Guy, I have a favor to ask of you. The man stood up. A favor? I will do my utmost to fulfill your trust. What is it that Konoha's great green beast can do for you? Guy's overwhelming enthusiasm made Rida feel insignificant. My squad's got a mission next week. I was hoping you could keep an eye on my little brother. That is a worthy favor. I will protect your brother with my life. Rida said, his name is Uzumaki Naruto, to Guy. If that's a problem. Not a problem. Konoha's great green beast does not renege on promises. I will protect young Uzumaki-kun with my life. Rida hurriedly said, thanks, and edged toward the door. I really appreciate this, Guy. It'll only be a week or so. Anko said, bye, waving. Before pulling Anko's head back to the scroll they were looking at, Aoba gave a two-fingered salute. Rida let out a sigh of relief and ducked from the room. That squad was eerie. It's definitely eerie. On his way back, he knocked lightly at Genma. His friend motioned him inside as the door opened. The layout of Genma's apartment was identical to that of every other apartment. However, Genma had transformed the plain, three-room space into a secure environment. Posters and hangings that he had gathered on his more tranquil missions or purchased from thrift stores covered his walls. The space was flooded with light and color. Contrary to popular belief, Genma feared the dark. The dark was his enemy at home, but it had no effect on his ability to crouch alertly in the shadows during missions. Or had adversaries. He was terrified of being helpless and exposed. As a result, Genma's senbon gleamed in the artificial light that filled the room. Did you ask Guy? Rida gave a nod. That's all set. What do you think about Bunny? Face. He's stronger than Hayate was, if only because he isn't coughing his guts up all over us. But they gave us a month with Hayate. They give anyone a month with a new rookie. Rida concurred, or at least 2 or 3 weeks. Subsequently, is your ankle going to be healed? Enough. That means no, a week, said Rida abruptly. 1 fucking week. Hitaki's right. We're going to get slaughtered. Have Kakashi put him at the back. We can take whatever it is as a 4-man cell. And you? If your ankle gives out, then what? The medics say it should be good enough. For Junin missions, you don't know this one will be bad. They'd give it to someone else if it weren't. Genma was unable to dispute that. 5 ninja were at a training field at 6 in the morning, with swords strapped to their backs and armor and masks on. Only the patterns on their masks and the color of their hair allowed the 5 identical shinobi to be identified in the early morning light. Mud. Brown, black, white, cinnamon. Brown, and red. Brown, and bright yellow yawning off to the side. They battled until Kakashi noticed Genma's stumbling steps and the shifting light. Lunch break. They all started to breathe heavily as they broke apart. Hayate snapped, it's 3 o'clock, into focus. Genma rubbed his ankle and sat down. Rida squatted next to him. You okay? He nodded, relieved that his mask concealed the teeth piercing his bottom lip. He remarked, Bunny's not too bad at teamwork, after he was able to relax his tense jaw without whimpering. Naruto had left for school hours earlier, before the morning dew had burned off the grass, so Kakashi should be glad. Rida looked across the training field, where their feet and jutsu had torn the soft grass to ruins. The north side was adorned with a new hill, and the air became dusty due to a number of broad ash stripes. Hayate was quietly coughing. He threw Genma a ration bar and said, Kakashi's never glad about anything. Eat, before he decides he isn't hungry. As it turned out, the two had just finished when Kakashi was getting back up and beckoning his teammates to do the same. Let's go. Kiba stated quite plainly, my mom says I shouldn't play with you, she says you're dangerous. Naruto's shoulders were thrown back. Of course I'm dangerous. I'm a better ninja than you. You ought to be afraid of me. You're not better than me, oh yeah? Yeah. Race you to the classroom. Go. The two boys, who were once again friends, ran toward the school. Kiba said, "Want to go to the park? After school?" Naruto pondered. "I'm supposed to wait for Ni-san here." Kiba waved a hand and said, "The park's just down there. Shika and Choji are going." "Okay," said Naruto. It was his first time going to the park with friends. They threw cardboard shuriken while racing around the climbing structure and playing on the slides. Bright in the summer afternoon, their unmistakable laughter reverberated throughout the playground. As the final few parents were heading out with their kids, Raida showed up at the school. He was still having trouble breathing after the group training session and was covered in sweat. He would immediately return once he had picked up Naruto, and the rest of them were still out there. He walked the final block to the school after descending from the roofs. A nervous Chunin rushed up to him at the gate. He asked, his fingers twitching nervously in his shirt sleeves, "What can I do for you, Anbu-san?" Raida noted absently that it was bad form. "Don't touch anything, child." The question was then registered by him. Oh, fuck. He thought it was too late now. He had neglected to take off the Anbu equipment. Instead, he asked, trying to sound friendly and unthreatening, "Where's Uzumaki-kun?" The Chunin took a quick look about the yard. "He's not here, Anbu-san. You might wish to check the park down the road. Many of the students go there after school." Raida said, "Thank you," and left the school in a calm manner. He started to run around the corner. If Naruto was by himself, he simply ran without pausing to consider how irrational his fear was. Naruto had survived his entire life alone. At the park's edge, he came to a stop and disappeared into the trees' shadows. Panic wasn't exactly needed in the village, so he hadn't been irresponsible enough to allow the residents to witness a fully uniformed Anbu running through the streets. However, when he saw Naruto's glowing head floating through the playground, he did become a little more at ease. He was secure. Wearing a green flak jacket, Raida removed his mask and quickly sealed himself before emerging from the trees. Henge was incredibly helpful in a variety of circumstances. He watched Naruto chase the Inuzuka kid, laughing with his head thrown back and his eyes shining, leaning against the park's perimeter fence with a half-smile on his lips. The man leaned on the railing beside him, and his smile widened as he sensed the chakra presence of a friend approaching. He said, "Your kid here?" "On the slide," confirmed the patriarch of Nara. "Lazy little creature," he remarked lovingly. Raida looked in Shikaku's direction. As expected, a Shikaku impersonator was sitting erect on the top of the slide with his head tilted back toward the sky. Raida remarked, "He's got your face." Shikaku smirked and agreed, "And my temper. Yoshino's on my case constantly about it. She says I'm not being a good role model." Raida asked gravely, "Were you ever?" Shikaku pushed Raida with his shoulder. "Brat. How's the jutsu going?" When the Inuzuka boy stumbled and fell on his face, Raida winced and said, "It's good. Tried it with Kurenai a few weeks ago, she likes it." Shikaku rubbed his stomach with his forearm and said, "Ha. I swear you're all masochists. Says a man who stabs himself in the leg every other mission." In mock offense, Shikaku turned away and said, I don't know what you're talking about." For a while, they observed the kids in friendly silence. "Remember when we were that young?" Shikaku shrugged his bony shoulders and said, "Too long ago for me." He went on, "I've got to get Shikamaru home. See you later, Raida." "See you." He threw the Uzumaki over his shoulder and said, "Take good care of the Uzumaki. Hey, Shikamaru, get your lazy butt down from there." Raida laughed as Shikaku, still seated at the top of the slide, stalked towards his lazy child. Raida believed he heard a faint mutter of, "Troublesome. You promised your mother you'd clean your room. It will be more troublesome if she finds 6 shogi boards still on your floor," Shikaku told his son. The boy went pale and slid down fast. As the two Nara left, Raida chuckled softly. Then, rising from his lazy slump, he straightened. "Naruto." He hopped over, grinning and waving his friends off. Raida.ni.san, "Guess what? Me and Kiba and Naruto," interrupted Raida. "You weren't at the school." "No, Kiba and I went to the park," he said, staring up at the man who was walking beside him in puzzlement. Raida said calmly but firmly, "You said you'd be at the school." He frowned down at the young boy, saying, "If you changed a plan like that on a mission, someone might die. If, for instance, we had planned to meet up at the school, but you weren't there, like today, I might think you were still in enemy territory. Then I would go back to find you, and maybe get caught. And you would be playing safely in the park. Do you see?" Naruto gave a remorseful nod. He toed at the dirt and said, "Sorry, Raida.ni.san. I won't do it again." Raida assured him, "Going to the park is okay. Naruto became alert again and chattered non-stop on the way home. But you need to leave me a message. So what were Kiba and you doing? He asked. Squad 14 still hadn't settled into a routine 2 days before the mission. Raida and Kakashi were sparring against the other two once more. In a hand-to hand battle with Raida, Kakashi blew a fireball at Tenzo and Hayate. In the heated air, Hayate engaged Steel as the Falcon. Masked Anbu leapt out of his way. Hayate twisted in midair and fell to the ground, facing Kakashi. Anticipating support from his teammate, he charged the ninjutsu practitioner. However, Tenzo attacked Kakashi, defending him from the second attacker where Masaru would have fallen in at his back. With the sudden appearance of a field of flowers and a slap to the back of Hayate's neck, Raida knocked him down, leaving him exposed. Tenzo was sprawled in the dirt, and Raida had a kunai at his neck when Hayate pulled out. Hayate coughed at the genjutsu master. Flowers? How much more embarrassing can you make it? Raida gave a playful leer. You want to know? Weary, Kakashi interrupted the conversation. Try again. The evening found Genma in a dojo behind Anbu headquarters, Raida teaching Naruto the fundamental seals that make up ninjutsu, Tenzo and Hayate discussing whatever 17-year-old boys talk about over extra dessert, and Kakashi quietly locked himself in his room. He needed to quickly get mission.fit. Even with the attention of the medics, his ankle remained weak. Repairing quickly was not the same as allowing the broken bones and torn muscle to mend. When the constant ache became a sharp pain, he stopped the exercises. He stretched the joint and stretched the injured limb out in front while crouching on one leg. When an unwanted chakra signature approached, he quickly got to his feet. Genma-san, said Matsuda. His voice was sickeningly friendly as he said, how convenient to meet you here. I was hoping for a sparring partner. Not tonight, replied the long-haired ninja. The other was blocking the door when he attempted to pass Matsuda. Matsuda didn't even maintain a semblance of civility. Genma stumbled back a step as he was thrust in the middle of the chest. His lips curled from his teeth in what could have been a smile if it weren't so spiteful. Let's spar. I'm not interested, was Genma's abrupt statement. Get out of my way. Matsuda launched an assault. Genma was only saved by reflex. He ducked and blocked Matsuda's blow. His ankle erupted in pain as he danced back. He staggered and immediately caught himself. However, Matsuda, a taijutsu expert, had enough time to take the lead. In an instant, he was on his face as Matsuda's fingers dug into his arm and pulled it up behind him. His arm on the left. Genma stopped. He said, you can let go now, with a brittle composure. I yield. Matsuda, however, always went too far with spars. He tightened his hold and pushed a knee into Genma's back. Calm started to break. Perhaps the man heard something in his voice, but he let go of his opponent. Let go, Matsuda. With ragged breathing, Genma rolled to his feet. That was weak. Genma-san, offered Matsuda. His opponent remained silent. Genma bravely avoided limping as she strode out of the dojo, desperately trying not to scream. That night, he didn't sleep well. 10 years of agony throbbed in his arm, and the past haunted his dreams. Genma thought, so nice to see you again, Katsu-chan. You're dead. He was speechless. He tried to tell himself, you aren't here. We missed you. He had a throbbing arm. The tall, scarred, dark-haired man snatched it up. The agony changed to the new pain of broken bone. It smelled of blood, and the walls were white and bare. Still as cute as ever, Katsu-chan. We can make up for lost time, He was pushed against the same wall by the man. Genma, who was only 10 years old, was significantly smaller than the other. Genma felt the heat of his breath on her face. Fear tightened his throat as he said, did you miss me? You betrayed us, Katsu-chan. I have to punish you for that. The agony started. He let out a scream. As soon as Genma walked into the cafeteria in the morning, Raida realized something was amiss. He was frightened and cautious, moving like a wild animal. He picked up the tray, his hands shaking too much to control, and it clattered. On his way to Raida's table, he almost spilled his breakfast all over the floor. He sat down 3 seats away from his friend and cocked his head so that his hair hung out in front of his face. Genma had not put on his forehead shield. Raida.ni.san. Naruto's head was inserted into his field of vision, interrupting his assessment. Can I have more eggs? Yeah, go get them, he said without paying attention. He whispered to his friend after Naruto had vanished, Genma. The man winced, hunching his shoulders and lowering his head even more. Silently, leave me alone, he said. Raida swore to himself. It was not a good time for Genma to have a breakdown. They had to depart tomorrow. Shattered eyes turned to him and said, "Genma, it's me. Genma." White walls. "Are you awake, at home, in the morning, and have breakfast?" Screaming. "Tray. Yes. Next, food." He was touched by hands. Helpless and exposed. "No, the eggs should be scooped. Take a seat. Keep your distance. Being close can be risky. Too near. Genma. Give me some space. Katsu. Chan. Genma. Genma, it's me. Genma." Slowly, he blinked. "Not true. Genma, get yourself together. You're not present." He shook his head and looked at Raida's worried expression. "You'd think I'd be over this by now," he said. "Katsu. Chan, quit talking. Silence, silence, silence." Both ninja turned around and asked, "Are you okay?" With a worried expression on his whiskered face, Naruto looked up at the Anbu. "You don't look happy." Genma stifled a chuckle. With a subliminal command to drop it, he pointed the final one at Raida and said, "I'm fine, kid. Fine. I'm all right. I'm all right." Retaining it. No losing it. To avoid drowning, he ate his breakfast quietly while listening to Naruto's upbeat voice. "Naruto, this is Guy.San. He's going to look out for you while I'm gone. Okay?" Naruto gave a wink. Guy exclaimed, "It is nice to meet you, Uzumaki Naruto. We shall have fun together this week." Huh, squeaked Naruto. Raida started, "He'll walk you to school and pick you up." Naruto grabbed his hand and squeezed it firmly. Raida flexed his fingers in an attempt to relax the excruciatingly tight hold. "Do not hesitate to ask me for anything, Naruto.kun." Guy pounded his chest, which was covered in black. "I am always here for you." Raida stooped to embrace Naruto. "I'll be gone before you get up tomorrow," he replied. "But we'll be back in a week or so. Don't get into trouble. And you may not eat ramen every night. And remember to brush your teeth. Yosh. Healthy teeth are essential to experiencing your springtime of your youth to the fullest. Sparkle." Raida got up and made his way to Naruto's room door, saying, "Be good, Naruto. See you in a week." "Ni.San." He exclaimed as a tiny weight struck and squeezed his legs. "I'll miss you. I'll be home soon, Naruto. Don't worry." A loud voice shouted in Naruto's ear as he woke up. "Good morning, Naruto." "Kun." The boy yelled as he sat bolt upright. Happy smiles came from the tall, black-haired, black-eyed, black-browed, and black-clad ninja. What a joyful summer morning. Be vigorous, Naruto.kun. Your youth awaits. Guy posed, his teeth flashing dazzlingly in the dim sunlight coming in through Naruto's window. "Stop shouting, Guy," a female voice outside the door moaned in dissatisfaction. Shying away from his new protector, Naruto drew his blankets up to his chin. Then a woman with purple hair poked her head into his bedroom. Her brown eyes were bloodshot, and her short hair was fumbled up behind her head. "Morning, kid. Hurry up, or you'll be late for school. What the hell is taking so long, Guy?" He scowled at her and said, "Naruto, this is the most youthful Anko-chan. She stayed up too late drinking last night, and now is paying the price." Anko, dressed as Guy, was in simple, skin-tight, Anbu blacks, lay on her back across the foot of Naruto's bed and said, Shut up, Guy." She appeared indifferent to the fact that her clothing and arched body were anything but conservative. She groaned and threw an arm over her eyes. "My fucking head." Naruto, his blue eyes wide, slid stealthily towards the head of his bed while remaining safely under the covers. Guy shook his head at her without causing any agitation to her flawless, glossy hair, saying, "Anko-chan, please watch your language. That was a very youthful thing to say, especially in front of Naruto.kun." She yawned, "Whatever, eyebrows. I'll meet you down for training, in a little bit." "Anko-chan. You can't go to sleep now. Why the hell not?" she exclaimed as she started to snore. Guy hesitated for a second, unsure. She rolled over and buried her face in Naruto's blankets, saying, "Anko-chan." The boy huddled against the headboard, pulling his knees up to his chest. Frightful woman. Guy made up his mind. Naruto covered his ears with his hands and exclaimed, "Anko-chan. You must awaken. The springtime of youth awaits." Anko let out a cry and followed suit. "Guy, you bastard!" the woman exclaimed as she leapt from Naruto's bed and started to throw herself at Guy. You insensitive useless eyebrow freak. I have a goddamn hangover. He spun around over the bed, avoiding her blow. Following him, Anko leapt elegantly to the bed so he could punch him in the face again. Naruto observed in astonishment, terror, and awe. Undoubtedly, it was a singular wake-up call. As Anko slammed into the wall, Naruto attempted to say, With a wild snarl, she leapt off it and slammed her head into Guy's stomach. They backpedaled into another wall in Naruto's small bedroom. Hey, he said louder this time. Anko easily jumped over the spinning kick that Guy dropped to the ground to deliver. Then he pushed off the ground and slammed a leg like scissors into her shoulder from above. The unexpected arrival of a very irate neighbor broke up their argument. Suddenly, the man with the brown hair said, "Can't you keep it the fuck down? Some of us are trying to sleep." "Sorry, friend," Guy said apologetic, then abruptly stopped. Anko wasn't very courteous. She smashed a fist into Guy's stomach and let out a triumphant cry. The man folded over his midsection and grunted, "That's for shouting, jerk. Time for school, Naruto," she continued, abruptly shifting to the upbeat tones of an older sister. Shivering, Naruto noted how Guy had been stopped by the other Anbu. It could be helpful to know that. He decided he already missed Rida.ni.san as he slid out of bed and hurried to get dressed. It was 2 hours before dawn when Squad 14 departed Konoha. As the sunlight started to filter through the leaves, they sped through the darkness, leaping through the trees and not slowing down. Around noon, Kakashi stopped when Rida quietly told him that Genma was limping and Hayate was wheezing. The team decided to take a rest on a cluster of broad branches after the young captain finally awoke from whatever preoccupied thoughts had been consuming his thoughts for the previous 40 miles. Silently, Hayate took a sip of water and one of the medications the doctors had prescribed, completely legal, no international treaties were broken. Genma swore under his breath as Hiru wrapped his ankle, tightening the supportive bandages. At times, Rida questioned whether Genma's filthy mouth served as a barrier against the outside world. The boy's ears were red as he chewed assiduously on a ration bar, so it was definitely keeping Tenzo at bay. Kakashi only gave them 10 minutes to rest before they set out once more, albeit a little more slowly now that the afternoon heat was rising. With a clap on Naruto's back, Guy exclaimed, "Naruto-kun, how was school today?" The boy gave a feeble smile in return as he staggered forward from the force. Now, the tall man wore a green jumpsuit. Strangely enough, it made him appear more normal than the uniform he had worn before. He tried, "Good?" And then he had an idea. "Guy-san, can we go get ramen? It is time for training, now, Naruto-kun. Ramen must wait until after we have exercised our fires of youth." Anko, who was not wearing an Anbu uniform, emerged from the crowd as they were leaving the academy. Guy's green monstrosity was barely more attractive than her form. Fitting mesh, but Naruto didn't notice because she had come up behind him. He yelled, his heart racing, as a chilly hand touched his cheek. She whispered, "Boo," in his ear. "Got you." Guy warned, "Anko Chan, please do not scare Naruto-kun like that," as Naruto turned to face the scary lady. Anko pouted and said, "Let me have some fun, eyebrows, you and your ribs have kept me out of missions for a week." "I'm bored," she said. Naruto approached Guy cautiously. He was safer than scary lady, regardless of how unsettling he was. She munched the last of the candy while holding a stick of dango in her other hand. Guy flicked her wrist, sending the skewer flying at her head. With one hand, he grasped it. After carefully tossing the skewer back to her, he placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder and said, "Be careful, Anko Chan. You might hurt one of the children. Let us go train." As the sun went down, they set up camp. The bedrolls spread out quickly, but Kakashi wasn't content until they had explored the forest within a mile radius and trapped a 50-foot perimeter. Tenzo drifted over in silence as Rida prepped to take first watch. He tilted his head in Kakashi's direction and asked softly, "Is he always like this?" Rida put his head against the trunk of the tree he had selected for sentry duty and said, "Yeah, keeps us alive, though." The teenager said, "We covered a lot of ground today," while hanging his legs from the branch. Rida gave a nod of approval. "Same tomorrow, probably." He briefly removed his gaze from the pitch black void and fixed it on Tenzu's face, which was palely floating above the spectral chest plate in the uniform that was darkly invisible. "What's on your mind?" The boy's gaze shifted to his swinging feet. He confessed, "I've never done assassination before. I'm only bringing it up because I don't want my inexperience to be a liability to the team," he said quickly. Hidden in the shadows, Rida's lips curled. A prepared speech, of course, to keep him from acknowledging anything as unworthy as fear. He remarked lightly, "You're lucky that massacres aren't like assassinations at all." Raida realized Tenzo was still a child. It's funny how much a person can change in just a few years. Tenzo was likely 11 years old at the end of the war, old enough to have served as a genin in the last years, but still young enough to have escaped the worst of it. The Hokage had attempted to keep the genin as far away from the front as possible as soon as peace appeared to be an option, but Genma and he had been thrown into the center of the fighting as soon as they received their headbands. Tenzo had most likely never witnessed a real battle's chaos. Raida was aware of how difficult it was to admit one's own weakness, and Tenzu's tone was half irritated, half repressed fear. "I've never done that before, either." The elder Anbu let out a sigh. "You get used to it," he remarked casually. It was a lie, actually. He was only proficient at it and had never grown accustomed to it. He said into the night, "Don't worry, Tenzo. You'll do fine," and hoped it was true. The following day, Naruto rushed into school without waiting for Kiba at the gate. When the bell rang, the Inuzuka boy discovered him hunched over at his desk. He plopped down in the seat beside his friend and asked, "What's up?" With haunted eyes, Naruto gazed at him. His words, "My brother's on a mission." With a shudder, Naruto said, "This other guy is taking care of me. And, in a tone of conspiracy, he wears green jumpsuits." Kiba gave him a clumsy back pat. "That's not so bad." "You haven't met him," Naruto said in a dejected tone to his friend, "and there's this other lady." 3 of the 5 were becoming agitated as they approached the border with grass. Tenzo looked bewildered, while Hayate watched his teammates with resignation. Even Raida, who appeared to be the most normal member of his team, was irritable. When they had halted in the middle of the morning, he had said, "Raida-san, is there any protocol for missions like this?" Tenzo had hoped for some guidance on the mission, and Raida had been helpful in the past. "Protocol?" had inquired Raida. To run it through his hair, he had raised a hand and hitched it slightly as it passed his face. "Don't mess the heads more than you can avoid. We need to ID some of them afterwards." He nudged. "Anything else I should know?" Raida had yelled, "I don't know, rookie. Can't you just leave me alone for a minute?" Tenzo gaped after him as he yanked his beaked mask over his face and stalked off. "He doesn't mean to be upset," Hayate later informed him. "Just," he said hazily, pointing to his face. Kakashi was only communicating with others to give orders when he said, "It happened around here." He and Kakashi both lost teammates in grass during the war. Tenzo nodded and expressed the hope that the mission would soon come to an end. Naruto-kun. "It's so good to see you again," said Quartermaster. Naruto smiled as he quickly closed the man's office door behind him. "Hi, Quartermaster-san." With casualness, he inquired, "What are you doing here?" He would have concluded that the child was fleeing from someone. It was probably not serious, though, because he didn't appear agitated or hurt. Naruto said, "Guy-san wants me to try on clothes," and he went to where the Anbu quartermaster was going through a binder of papers, marking off boxes and making occasional notes on a page. With an eyebrow raised at the 5-year-old, he inquired, "Do these clothes happen to be green, one-piece jumpsuits?" "Yeah. Then you're welcome to stay here as long as you need," he said, "but you have to help me inventory the supplies." "Thanks, old man." The quartermaster gave him a scowl. "Don't call me old." "Sorry, OL. Quartermaster-san. Seijun-san is fine, Naruto-kun. Now, do you see that box over there? The cardboard one on the second shelf. Go over there and tell me how many metal glove plates we have left." Naruto leapt to the shelf and dragged the big cardboard box down. He took a seat on the floor and started to remove the steel rectangles that had 3 holes punched in each of their short sides and a slight curvature. Naruto looked up as the door opened again, prepared to flee once more if Guy with that awful green thing was present. "Perfect for training. It will help your fire of youth burn brightly." Rather, it was a young girl with brown hair tied up on top of her head in 2 buns. "Tell him Seijun, Ibiki-san says he only has 2 boxes left, Dad," she said. "He says about 6 more should hold them to the end of the year." The graying man added a note to his binder and turned back a few pages. "Thanks, Tenten. Let's make that 8. Ibiki always underestimates bandages, and I don't want him stealing from the hospital again. Oh, Tenten. This is Naruto. Naruto, my daughter, Tenten. You both go to academy, but Tenten's in her 2nd year." The young girl turned to look at Naruto, who was seated on the floor with his glove plates arranged around him. "Hello," she said. "Hi," he said again. "Tenten, Go ask Junji.san if he needs more glass test tubes. I think I gave him the last box already. Naruto, do you see a wooden crate marked with a red cross on that shelf? If it's there, it ought to be in the back. On the second day out of Konoha, sunset had long since passed. In Kakashi's ear, a voice crackled over the radio. Frog in position. Tersely, the captain inquired, how many sentries? 4, that I can see from here. Falcon in position. 3, but I think I'm overlapping one with Frog. By the big rock. Yeah. So 6, interrupted Kakashi. Bunny, where are you? Tenzo muttered, almost ready, Captain, into his microphone. The mud here is making travel a little difficult. Behind his 2 mask layers, Kakashi smiled. The rookie is the ideal person to send to the swampy side. Well, hurry up Bunny. We're waiting on you. Tenzo nodded, yes, Captain, then turned off his microphone and muttered to himself. Says the man sitting in a comfortable tree reading porn. Tenzo checked his radio and went pale, saying, the tree's not that comfortable, Bunny. He was certain that he had switched it off. With hesitation, he said, Captain? Kakashi refused to acknowledge anything, so he must have been speculating. The scratchy voice of Hayate interrupted. Stop messing with his head, Captain. Don't worry, Rabbit, he's not offended. Tenzo objected, but I didn't say anything. If you weren't thinking, why should Kakashi get to read porn and sit in a tree while I slog through mud? You're more of saint than the rest of us, Genma said. Are you in position yet? Not yet, Tenzo shot back, sourly. Okay, I've got a visual on 3 sentries. The Kakashi yawned, finally. He turned off his radio and took out his book, saying, well, keep tabs on them all. Hayate and I will be doing our best in our terribly difficult assignment. Have fun. The 3 agents swore as they sat uneasily around the enemy camp. Naruto returned to the park with his friends the following afternoon. Shikamaru was irritated and avoided interacting with any of them. He was offered a chip by Choji. Kiba squatted in front of the Nara boy and urged, come on, Shikamaru, tell us what's wrong. Shikamaru simply kept gazing at the clouds. Shikamaru? Asked Choji. Shikamaru's face was above his wave of the chip. Shikamaru simply yawned and stared up at the sky. Naruto, he said at last, why is everyone so against you? Naruto sat back on his heels and asked, huh? My mom and dad were arguing last night, he continued. Naruto sat down in the wood chips and ran his fingers through them. Mom says playing with you isn't safe, and could be bad for my future. Dad says his friend likes you, and he trusts his friend. Why are they arguing about you, Naruto? Why does my mother even know you? Naruto asked. Shikamaru raised his gaze to his companion. Calmly, I've been watching people today, he said. People stare at you, not nicely. Naruto looked at the ground and shrugged. He looked up unsurely and said, I don't know why, but it's always been like that. But I've got you guys now, right? We're friends now, right? There were leeches in that swamp, Kakashi. Taiko, Tenzo said. Naturally, he wasn't complaining. He was only ensuring that his captain was aware of the circumstances. Kakashi turned the next page. What was that, rookie? Tenzo leaned back on the ground and rolled his eyes. A few meters away, Genma was sitting in a tree, looking around the forest for threats. In order to avoid losing the trail during the day, Hayate and Raida were following the group of missing.nin. Later, when the group set up camp once more, the rest of the squad would catch up. They were near grass country and, based on the information Intel had given, 3 days ahead of schedule, so Hitaki didn't think they would go very far today. Squad 14 had time to get ready because the missing.nin would not yet cross the border. Kakashi. Tenzo scowled as Hitaki instantly raised his head from his book. Why did Kakashi focus on Genma while ignoring him? Did they have anyone from Rock? Kakashi unrolled the mission scroll after taking it from his pouch. Mist, mist, leaf, sand, cloud, cloud. The other 25 or so are unidentified. They might know about the IK-62. They'd have to cross the border first. Intel says they're waiting for a contact in Fire Country. Yeah. Genma hunched awkwardly on his branch but fell silent. Captain? Tenzo inquired. What's IK-62? Kakashi took out his book once more. Rock safe house in grass country. Probably still stocked from the war. Genma remarked, definitely still stocked, we've been keeping an eye on their movements around here. Rock's been collecting explosives there. If our group gets their hands on them, we're in serious shit. 3 more nights, Kakashi promised. They won't cross before then. Poking the quiet boy in the shoulder, Kiba said, "Hey, Shino, want to play ninja?" Naruto, Shikamaru, and Choji were also out recruiting. With a fierce smile and a pocket full of practice shuriken, the girl said, "Tenten-chan." Naruto called out, "We're playing a big game of ninja, want to come?" Tenten played that game well. "I'd love to." "Great, I got a few more people to ask, but we're all meeting at the slide in the park." Naruto ran away. He then yelled, "Sakura-chan," and pulled up beside the girl with the pink hair. "Want to come play ninja with everybody?" Sakura wrinkled her forehead and scowled. "Who are you?" "We're in the same class," he reminded her, "Uzumaki Naruto." The girl gave an awkward smile and said, "Oh, oops, I didn't notice you." Naruto gave a shrug. It happens. It was surprising that the teacher didn't know him, though, given how he and Kiba had been teasing her yesterday. Hey. The teacher had been reaming him out every other day, and he and Kiba had decided on retaliation. That tack trick was gorgeous. The teacher hadn't bothered to check for 2 layers of traps. The game of ninja started as the group gathered at the slide rapidly grew. If you were hit by a shuriken, you were eliminated. There were 2 teams. One hiding and one searching. Kiba and Naruto's team included Sakura and Tenten, while the second team was composed of Choji, Shikamaru, and Shino. Approximately 15 children played together until the sun started to set. "There," muttered Kakashi. An almost imperceptible twitch of his black, gloved hand brought 9 eyes to the empty clearing below the ridge and a distance away. Half. Seals were raised by 5 hands. Kai. Abruptly, the grassy, dark opening was crowded with bodies. "Sleeping," muttered Kakashi. "How many centuries, do you think? Fire Country's last chance was tonight." Genma lay on his belly above the ridge and shrugged, shoulders digging into the dirt. An arc was drawn around the camp by a single finger. 5 there. At least 3 on the other side. Hayate's hoarse voice interrupted. "I saw 4 last night." Tenzo went on to say, "But it was only 2 before that." Invisible in the darkness, Genma gave him a glance. "They were in a cave, Bunny. They only needed 2. Tenzo became slightly shriveled. "Sorry." Kakashi reminded them all, "This is our last chance before the border, we can't screw up." The ninja took a seat and concentrated on the task at hand. 6 to 1 odds, mumbled Hayate. "Clones might be useful." Kakashi gave the order, "Take the sentries out as quietly as possible, pop a clone if you need it. Genma, you start from here. Hayate, you take the far side. Tenzo, left, I'll go right. Raida, if you could toss up some covering genjutsu." "Yes, Captain." Kakashi lowered his mask to reveal his face. In the dim starlight, the snarling wolf gleamed uncannily. A demon wolf out to murder. Remember, no survivors. The sentries were divided between them. The 3 days of surveillance had revealed that the sentries rotated every 3 hours, and they had at most seen 9 a night. That meant they each had 2. Tenzo moved like a shadow through the trees. They had used the concentrated, washable dye that Anbu brought on most missions to darken their masks, armor, and the steel plates on their gloves, so there was nothing metal for the moonlight to glint off of. Unnoticed, the Black Ops moved. The group was expected to consist of 8 to 10 Junin, with intel predicting that the remaining members would be mid to high Chunins. In Tenzu's ear, the radio crackled. 2 minutes. Acquiescence was whispered by 4 voices. He positioned himself among the trees. Tenzo marked his 2 targets, positioned in a broad circle around the hidden camp, and said, 1 minute. At the same time, he made a decision. After a brief hand seal, a second masked Tenzo emerged with a minuscule burst of extra chakra. Tenzo collapsed to the forest floor, saying, 10 seconds. 5. Now. 9 bodies fell silently into the dirt around the perimeter. "Approach," Kakashi said in a barely audible voice. Tenzo dismissed his clone and paced past the corpse. He halted behind a tall trunk as the trees started to thin out, blending in with the moon. Shadow. 3. 2. 1. Attack. At least they would have had the advantage of surprise. When Raida's covering illusion took effect, the same ninja who had used genjutsu to hide the camp woke up. The rest of the camp was awakened by the smell of blood, but Hayate skewered him as he started to stand. 20 ninja got up and grabbed weapons to engage in combat. Wooden bindings sprung from the ground to encircle the man's ankles, trapping one as he staggered from his blankets. He rolled to his feet after landing on his face and using Kaiden Jutsu against the wood. Tenzo tossed a handful of shuriken at close range, deflected his own kunai with his own, and then, just for good measure, tore a kunai across his throat. His fingers splattered wetly with blood. 2 more were coming up behind him. More wood tentacles emerged from the ground, writhing like living things as Tenzo flashed through seals. The 2 ninja jumped over the hazards with ease and dodged. Tenzo took a step back, hands moving once more. In order to block a katana's thrust and draw a kunai, he broke off in the middle of his seals. Tenzo leapt away as the other missing nin gave a wind attack. Just before the katana blade entered the man's back, he twisted beneath the wind. User's protection and pushed his kunai into his chest. His life was saved by his armor. Only the first inch of the blade penetrated his flesh because the missing nin miscalculated the force required to pierce Anbu. Issue vests. Before the man could draw his sword, the Anbu reached behind him and used his gloved hand to grab the blade. He hurled a shuriken at the man with the untidy hair and half-dressed outfit with the other. With blood gushing from his neck, the ninja dropped the hilt and fell back to the bedrolls arranged on the floor. Tenzo felt the warmth of his own blood leave his body as he tore the blade from his back. He ought to eliminate at least 1 more, he's down 3. Tenzo concluded that the 3 had been Chunin level. This implied that the Junin must be being engaged by Kakashi and the others. Only the clash of metal and the shrill cries of a lone, thin voice could be heard in the eerily silent clearing. Tenzo looked around, trying to determine where his teammates were, as his tunnel vision was no longer solely focused on the enemies in front of him. Hayate was most likely the blade flickering over there. He saw his silhouette briefly as a body dropped from his katana. Then, a moment too late, Tenzo sensed the flicker of chakra behind him. The huge club crashed down towards his skull, and he spun around, kunai up but in the wrong position. He was just a moment away from having his head slammed in when he made the pointless gesture of lifting the kunai. He thought he could hear birds. The mace faltered and fell. Tenzo dropped to his knees and easily pushed the spiked weapon away, preventing his assailant from accelerating him down. Tenzo glanced up at the missing nin's startled face as the mace thudded into the dirt. With a soft sucking sound, the corpse slumped off Kakashi's fist, revealing his mask. Tenzo slowly stood up, breathing laboredly, "Thanks." The young man turned away as red flashed in Kakashi's mask's eyehole. Harshly, "Don't get distracted," he said. The clearing was suddenly quiet, and the ringing of metal had stopped. The silence was broken only by one voice. Kakashi strode to the spot where the cries had been replaced by soft sobs. He moved forward with purpose, akin to a hunting wolf. Tenzo trailed behind, pressing his left hand against his back. The ninja, who had a scratched cloud headband around his neck, was younger than Tenzo. As the dark figure stooped to block the moonlight, he attempted to scurry away from Kakashi, but Kakashi placed a sandal on his wrist. Silently, he inquired, "How many?" Tenzo noticed the boy was crying. He wondered whose jutsu had done the nearly complete pulping of his right side. He felt a little sick at the sight. Sobbing, 30.2, he said. "Please, let me go. I didn't do anything, please." Kakashi made a cut to his throat. The other 3 were already gathered behind their captain, watching apathetically as they melted out of the shadows. Kakashi got to his feet and took a quick look at his team. "Any injuries?" Genma shook his head, resting heavily on Raida's shoulder. Tenzo chose not to voice his displeasure over his stab wound, saying, "Nothing life-threatening." He didn't need to mention it, it was a minor matter. "Count the bodies," said Kakashi in an emotionless voice. Including the 9 dead sentries, they found precisely 30 bodies. Hitaki unfolded the mission scroll as Genma summoned a light. 5 of the 6 ninja who were specifically on the list for elimination were among the corpses in the clearing. Tenzo anticipated that they would immediately set out to pursue the survivors, but Kakashi intervened. "Ankle, Genma." With a grimace, the injured man pushed back his mask to get a better look. As Genma removed the bandages, Raida lowered him to the ground. He was clearly experiencing pain from the swollen, purple joint. As he started to tie it up once more, he asked Raida, "Can you get me a painkiller?" He said, "Nothing else to do," to Kakashi. "It's not a problem." They all had portable medical kits, and Raida gave him 2 pills from a bottle. "Rookie," added Kakashi. "Any injuries? Don't lie to me." Hayate started coughing softly. Tenzo gave a nod. "Back, it's small, though." Kakashi followed him around. Before allowing the younger nin to buckle his vest, he covered Tenzu's back with a layer of bandages and said, "Take off the vest." "Any tingling?" Genma inquired from his seat on the ground that was covered in blood. Tenzo shook his head. "Nausea. Probably not poisoned, then." "Kakashi, if you're going to mother. Hennis, I'll tie up that leg, or I'll make Hayate do it." Kakashi's leg caught Tenzu's attention. The blackness of the lower half suggested blood, and the pale skin peeking through the torn cloth on his thigh was a stark contrast in the darkness. Tenzo took a roll of bandages from his own medical kit and cursed himself for being so blind. As he got closer, Kakashi withdrew the cloth from his hands. Through the mask, his red eye continued to glare. "I can do it myself, rookie," he said, his tone tinted with amusement. Less than 5 minutes after the battle, the massacre was over. They were prepared to leave with a deep but clean wound. Kakashi swiftly executed the summoning jutsu, his hands already smeared with his own blood. In a puff of smoke came a pack of dogs. 2 ninja left here, he angrily informed them. "Find them." After a moment, the smallest one said, "Here," as it nosed the ground on the clearing's edge. "They're heading this way, together." "Towards grass," hissed Genma. The chaos of the meadow was left behind as the 5 ninjas ran into the night. When they discovered the corpse, it was the first indication that something was amiss. The dogs came to a sudden stop, churning to a stop on the ground in a semicircle. Kakashi lifted the head of the body from the dirt as the ninjas fell from the trees. He affirmed, "It's the 6th one." He turned the body over and gazed at the kunai in the man's chest. "The other killed him." With a cough swallowed, Hayate questioned, "Why? Does he have other allies to go to?" Raida jumped back into the trees and said, "We have to find him before he reaches grass." They ran even faster after Kakashi dropped the body and said, "Come on." Even Kakashi failed to notice the wires because they were so well concealed, almost undetectable, and moving so quickly. The taut razor. Wire whiplash tore through Hayate's Anbu vest as the trap threw him into a tree. A moment later, there was an explosion, and the trees surrounding Hayate were engulfed in flames. As the boy's body was flung through the air, the other members of the squad came to a halt and spun around. "Hayate!" exclaimed Genma. In order to put out the fires that threatened Hayate's limp form, Kakashi quickly soaked the area with a spray of water jutsu. When they got to him, he was breathing, but not very well. He had dazed eyes and blood slid out from between his lips. When Genma attempted to pull him to his feet, he moaned. The shinobi said, "Broken ribs," as he lightly pressed against his friend's chest. Hitaki fell to his knees, his bare Sharingan spinning, and said, "Concussion, too." Green light surrounded his hands as he made a few unpracticed hand signs. Genma commanded, "Stop that," pushing Kakashi's hands aside and interfering with the healing jutsu. "I've copied them before," an insistent Kakashi said. Genma said sharply, "I know, but you couldn't help Masaru with them. Remember?" His words were as icy as his voice. "If you drain yourself here, the mission will fail." Behind his mask, Kakashi glared at his subordinate. "You'd let Hayate die?" Hayate choked out, "I'm not dying." He couldn't seem to think clearly and couldn't concentrate on the figures above him. "Ribs. I've had worse." He knew, however, that he was not dying. "We have to go," the pug pointed out. Kakashi looked down at his dog and said, "He's pulling ahead." His squad agreed. Grumbling, "Fine," he said. He pointed to 2 of his dogs and gave a growl, saying, "Genma, stabilize Hayate as best you can, and stay with him. Raida, Tenzo, with me." They advanced to Genma and Hayate's flanks. "They'll stay, too," Kakashi informed his sidekick. The other 3 then made another leap into the trees. The missing nin had a lot of speed. Still behind him, they crossed the boundary between grass country and fire country. The lead pug then came to a halt. "There," he said, in a voice as gravelly as Hayate's in his illness. The 3 ninja looked down through the branches to the seemingly deserted clearing below and said, "He's stopped." At the edge of the trees was a gaping trapdoor into the ground. "IK-62, muttered Kakashi. "Damn you, Genma. Why'd you have to be right?" The dog said, "Are you going in?" "He's in there, you know, and it smells like explosives." "Yeah." He looked up at his summoner cynically. "Don't do anything stupid, brat." A quiet voice asked, "Can you do clones, Tenzo?" Hitaki said. "Yes, Captain," Tenzo replied, equally grave. "I don't have the range to send one down there, Kakashi," Raida reminded his captain. "Not if you want us out of the blast radius." Kakashi nodded without turning his black mask. With a creaking sound, the clone detached from Tenzu's body and said, "There won't be space for more than 2, probably." "Clone, Tenzo." Simultaneously, Kakashi's shadow clone appeared, and the 2 fell to the forest floor. "Back off," Kakashi commanded his rivals. Back into the trees they faded. The wait seemed to go on forever, but it was only a few minutes. Abruptly, A massive pillar of flame blossomed in the clearing, whipping the superheated air around them as the explosion roared. Their clones were destroyed, and Tenzo and Kakashi recoiled at the flood of information. Tenzo went pale behind his mask. Kakashi yelled, "Back," barely audible above the thunderous crackle of the fire that was starting to spread. He sprayed the area with water and quickly made a set of seals. However, as distinct caches exploded, the fire raged on, with smaller secondary explosions rattling the bunker's remnants. With the dogs running alongside them, the three ninja dashed back towards their wounded comrades. Kakashi didn't bother to inquire about moving Hayate. Genma stood, his swollen ankle unsteady, saying, "We need to go." Raida, who was the only one not hurt, leaned over and gently took Hayate in his arms. Hayate's eyes were still not focusing, and even though Genma had bandaged the long welts on his chest and tightly wrapped his ribs still ached every time he coughed. Tenzo nestled under Genma's left arm without a question. Gently, "Thanks, kid," Genma said. Then they left once more. When Kakashi arrived at the mass of bodies strewn across the forest floor, he stopped. He reached into his hip pouch and took out a black bag. "Keep going." The bag was thrown over his shoulder, bulging strangely, when he finally caught up to his teammates. They were powered by chakra and the willpower that, far too frequently, made the difference between life and death. 2 full days of travel took 16 hours to complete. That's 16 hours and more soldier pills than the medics said were safe. Kakashi briefed the team on the events that transpired in the bunker in the early hours of the morning. As the clones had entered, the missing Nin had been unpacking the explosives and lighting a fuse. "Back off," he had commanded, gesturing over an explosive tag with the sparking wick. The clones had paused in the doorway, staring into the bunker's bleak white room. The smell of chemicals was overpowering. It was almost wall to wall with boxes and crates. When Kakashi's clone had asked, "I thought you came to grass for asylum, why would you do this?" The man replied, "I did," as the fuse dipped nearer to the tag. "This is the price. As long as this place is destroyed, they'll pay my family a pension even if I die. My children won't starve." "Why would grass do that?" Tenzu's substitute said. "How do you know they won't go back on their word after you're dead? You village bastards always think that only your village good." The argument between the ninjas. Grass is an honorable village, and an honorable country. They've never broken a promise like that before. I know people who've worked for them. He lowered his hand. The clone of Kakashi started creating seals for a water jutsu. "I wouldn't do that," instructed the ninja. The clone halted, saying, "I can drop this faster than you can finish your jutsu." Kakashi's clone attempted to reason with him, saying, "You'll start a war. Rock against grass, or grass against fire. Someone will want retribution. What about your children then?" According to the ninja, they're safely in Lightning Country. Then he smiled and released the fuse, saying, "They'll be safe. This is my mission." The bunker was totally demolished. With their last remaining chakra and a hope that they were mistaken, Squad 14 arrived in Konoha. Since the Anbu had not been able to stop the trigger, which no one had anticipated coming so quickly, grass had been gathering missing Nin for months. There was no time, so they staggered through the gates without pausing. Kakashi and his team made their way directly to the Hokage Tower and the hospital. Hayate had lost consciousness. The Hokage's door was guarded by an ANBU, but Kakashi brushed past them, and they waved him through respectfully, acknowledging his captainship and the bloody smell on his skin. He bowed to his Hokage and dropped the heavy bag on the ground. The bag still smelled of death, even though it had stopped leaking blood hours earlier. He stated, "IK-62 has been destroyed," in a tone that was passive. Kusa ordered it. The Hokage realized right away, after all, it was his job. "I'll need a full report as soon as the council is convened," he stated. He had a hard, weathered face. He cast a disgusted glance at the bag and said, "Wait in the council room. And get someone to take the heads to the intelligence division." After handing the bag to an Anbu at the office door, Kakashi made his way to the lower level of the Hokage Tower and pushed open the council room's tall doors. It was a big, curved room without windows, but it was equipped with almost 20 chairs and a long table. Kakashi dragged a chair to the wall, pulled it away from the table, and then sprawled down without a fuss. Obito's Sharingan was already long closed, so he closed his own eye behind the mask. The eye that was borrowed hurt. He had almost lost another member of his people. He ought to have noticed that wire. The missing Nin should have been aware that traps would be left. I should have anticipated it. Furthermore, Tenzo lacked experience. His carelessness had almost resulted in his death. Tenzo would have died if Kakashi hadn't been observing him out of the corner of his eye. Obito felt a throb in his eye, so near. As the door opened, elderly men hurried into the room and pulled out chairs while whispering to one another. What is happening at this emergency council meeting? Is anyone aware? Kakashi disappeared into the darkness, another area of darkness. Shortly afterward, the Hokage swept into the room, his robes swirling. He said, "We have a situation with Kusa, without emotion. It has the potential to turn into the Fourth Ninja War." Around the table, murmurs began to rise. A voice said, "Hokage, Sama." With a raised hand, the Hokage silenced the voices. With his eyes searching for Kakashi in his shadowed corner, he called, "The Anbu captain leading the mission involved will give his report. Wolf.San." Like a ghost emerging from the darkness, the Anbu rose silently. Unaware of the ninja, he stepped out into the light, and several counselors began. A glimmer of contempt flickered through Kakashi. The shadows were ninja. He was to be expected. As if I should have anticipated the cables. Ignoring the pain in his eye and leg, he bowed to Sarutobi and said, "Hokage. Sama. We were assigned to eliminate a group of 30.2 missing nin seeking asylum in grass country," he said. "We ambushed Th." Kakashi stopped reciting as the door slid open. The late arrival said, "My apologies, Hokage. Sama," with a smooth voice. His jet black eyes swept across the table. Every seat was occupied. The lone available chair had been pushed aside by Kakashi. A younger counselor rushed to his feet and offered the sullen man his chair. With disdain, the Hitaki on the edge observed him take the seat. After giving his fellow counselors a nod, Uchiha Fugaku turned to look at the Anbu. He squinted his eyes. A steely gray eye briefly met the hard black Uchiha's gaze. Both of them stopped glaring to acknowledge the Hokage when he spoke again. "Welcome," he said to the head of the clan. "Please begin again, Wolf.San."
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.